puts more high effort,
right?
And that like the high effort should get more viewership, but it doesn't.
I know.
And truthfully though, like even with the Opus AI and all that, like it's not perfect. And I find myself sometimes being less than satisfied with how it cooks it up, which is fine, but it gets you like 60% there.
Yeah.
And it takes still effort to like really make it a good, clean
segment. Exactly.
That's punctuated, has a like you get a full point within the clip. Sometimes I found, and maybe that's just like we talk long form, so it's kind of hard for it to boil it down to a 90-second clip. And there's like, I feel like I'm always wanting more, but that's also part of it. It's like you want the short clips to get people to want more, so that they go and like try to find the full context of what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope, that people have enough interest to like click and explore. It's usually just these little segments, you know, that in the full context of the conversation it makes more sense. But finding those clips that are like good, like in media res sort of segments, I think is pretty clutch. Had a little.
We already have a caller. I think this is good. The guy texted you about.
Oh, yeah.
Bing bong.
You're listening to the ZTitic Newscast on the ZTitic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
Alright, welcome to episode 53 of the ZTitic Newscast. We are your hosts, myself, Dave, and
Xavier Diamant.
And it is unbelievably May 29th, 2025. It's been quite a while since we last had a show. I think it was March 5th on our last broadcast, so it's been a while, a lot longer than we would like. We've had a lot going on.
Lots.
Me in the workforce and
traveling
with the
everywhere.
Kids, and same with Xavier.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a nomadic
Indeed.
figure, but we're really excited to be here. We have absolutely no shortage of things to talk about, and I want to start by kind of reading the description of today's show. It'll kind of set the theme for at least the core, kind of the things that really jump out since we last talked, that can just be excavated and take us on many different rabbit holes. Today we will be exploring the disturbing implications of AI, the developments there, which have been replete, on an ongoing basis. Different services and technologies that are now being, given to the public to access and play with, like Google VO3, the video generator, Neuralink, of course, and really talking about as how close are we to human obsolescence in this world of deep misanthropy and technocracy, a core theme really for ZTitic Newscast. We will also be breaking down the latest developments. I know Xavier, this is a very a topic that he's very passionate about and has brought up many times, the phenomenon we call squatter nation, also known as the ongoing cost of living crisis. Diddygate, which there's just new stuff coming out almost every day, as well as the Katy Perry Blue Origin theme park ride. And I want to introduce the George Droyd Memography in context to all of that, because it's something that has been getting surfaced to me on on Instagram predominantly, and I think it's an interesting kind of cross section of the culture war, as well as the like memography, like how memes are becoming the new way to communicate complicated ideas, especially in the age of AI, where censorship is a big deal, but now we're being given these tools that allow very interesting productions to be released with very little effort. As what the censorship thing too. When we go into it, you'll see the racial undertones and so on. Why are we being allowed to see this? When it's the platforms that have historically, traditionally been clamping down on anything, even closing in on racist,
right?
As well as just as we always do, touch on kind of a melange of different things that you might categorize as ponzinomics. The elephants in the room, so to speak, of political hypocrisy, and what I see, and you might agree, as the ongoing kind of short-circuiting of the right-left psychology.
Yep.
I guess to start off with, I'll start with the first main topic. I'll start with some housekeeping items because it's related, and that's the whole development of AI. You can see our thumbnail image. I'll flash it up on the screen if you're just listening. Is this AI generated image that I created with Grok, the Elon Musk Twitter AI system. And I don't remember the exact prompt, but I was looking for some sort of intersection between human consciousness, the let's say the infection of AI and its impact on human beings. And then I also set it in underground tunnels with caged children in the background because I think that's the juxtaposition that I'm seeing out there with everything going on with Diddygate and this brave new world that we find ourselves in, where we're seemingly continuing to outsource our consciousness, as you've put it before, Xavier, to these systems which have incredible creative potential, but also destructive potential as well. Sort of like the calculator effect on our arithmetic skills.
Right, the whole Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt cognitive diminishment agenda.
As far as housekeeping goes, I do find a lot of the AI services very helpful.
Useful.
And useful. There's a lot of utility, which is why the markets are reacting to it, and it's nothing new, really. Like, companies have been promoting themselves as AI forward and AI centric and investing in AI for a long time. And you might say Google, even Yahoo, Ask Jeeves, these legacy companies, they're striving towards what we're now really feeling more like is coming to fruition, but it's nothing new. It's just that there was like a very clear, I think, a demarcation point in 2022 when ChatGPT came out and was made, accessible by the masses. People started to get all kinds of new ideas and about what was possible. Anyways, housekeeping wise, I think I might have mentioned this on the last show, but if you guys follow the channel, and if you don't, please do subscribe, like, and comment. We started to use some AI applications that have really, I think, helped us. Xavier introduced me to opus.clip, which is like an AI video editor tool, and it tremendously saves time in terms of taking content that's already out there in maybe a raw, unpolished form. It finds certain segments that you prompt it to find, and then it edits them for you, puts captions on them. You can do all sorts of new things, and they're releasing all sorts of features. So if you follow our channel, you'll see we've posted several clips over the last couple of months, which are excerpts from
past shows, which is something we've always wanted to do but haven't had really the bandwidth to execute on. And I love it. I think I've used it a bunch. I want to use it more. I'm also using AI to create very interesting, compelling thumbnail images that reflect the kind of sentiment or theme of the clips themselves. So if you haven't, especially if you're a newer listener, which I think we have some tonight, definitely worth checking out our channel. And this is a good kind of intro to the rest of our content library, which at this point, like I said, episode 53, we do about 3 hours every episode. On average, we've probably done once a month. We would like to do more. And if you'd like us to do more, you can't help us any more than to subscribe, share, like, comment, post this in any Telegram channels or other places that you frequent, which are surely not aware of our content. The other thing, which I just started figuring out today, and that is, I think the biggest utility of AI right now is in the summarization department, like taking big pieces of information and asking it to summarize or hit the high notes, categorize, and organize. And what I've been doing today is I exported the Telegram chat for ZTidig News Network, which you can find the button on our website, ztidig.news. I encourage you guys to join it, even though we have pretty low membership at this point. It's constantly being updated. It's a really good ongoing news feed if you do any kind of news aggregation or follow certain channels. It's just another great one to add to your list. So I exported everything that was posted in the time between now and our last episode, and I asked it to categorize the posts by the main topics of tonight's show. So one is the implications of AI, which we're talking about, and you can see here it just like put together all these posts and videos, about the intersection between AI and biology. It includes, an article about the first modular quantum computer. It picks up on the sentiment, talking about Neuralink and their development towards telepathy and telekinesis. There was a Kurzweil chart showing the 80 years of exponential growth in computing and where kind of we're at in this timeline and where we're potentially headed. And then it goes into the Squatter Nation. There's a bunch of clips. The Katy Perry, it wasn't able to pick one up, but I've got one saved. So anyways, I'm thinking about ways to do this.
That's great.
Not only just to help me outline for the show and have like all this content at my fingertips, but also possibly uploading this as its own page, sort of like an addendum to the post, to our broadcast. Like, hey, these are the top, because there's invariably going to be a lot of material in here that we don't have time to cover, but is definitely relevant and worth checking out.
Excellent. I mean, that's a huge organizational and time-saving
tool.
It
I
really
literally
is.
asked it to write an HTML page.
Wow.
And it created the code. It's hosted locally on my computer, referencing files that I downloaded from Telegram. And I just asked it, like, keep all the location URLs for the images and the videos, and it perfectly. I mean, all these images were they're being read locally on my machine. So really cool. And we'll scroll through this as we talk. There's videos and whatnot. The last thing, going back to the opus.clip, it's something I'd like to put out there, and I'll probably clip this up later, but an idea I had, sort of a force multiplier. If you're a fan of ZTidig News, if you like our content, what we need is more subscribers. We need a bigger audience. We're going to feed off of that, and we're going to become more prolific in our publications.
The more input, the more throughput.
There's 53 episodes times 3 hours. So
It's over 200 hours worth of
yeah,
material.
over 200 hours of content that really, even though, you know, some of the episodes are 3, 4, 5 years old, they're still very prescient and relevant today, but they've been largely unmined. Some of those videos have like 10 views.
Yeah,
you know.
25,
And
30,
so like
yeah.
there are nuggets in there. There are like golden nuggets of information, insights, you know, humor and so on that I don't have the time yet to go through and dig up and publish. So my idea is, since we are the first next generation news network powered by Theta, by the way, we're a live call-in show, and our tradition is to reward participants for engaging with our content in T-Fuel, which is a cryptocurrency on the Theta network. I'm thinking about extending that to have some sort of bounty program where we give you access to our Opus Pro account. You would become a team member, and you would generate clips of us with certain parameters that we provide. Say, like today's bounty is we want 5-10 minute clips from episodes from 2 years ago or something like that. You go and you use opus.clip. You don't have to pay anything. You're using our account. You generate the content. You don't have to download anything. It's all in the cloud. And then if your clip gets approved, you earn a T-Fuel bounty. And that's a way to kind of like community source the Zitidic News Network like build out. Just an idea. If you like the idea, please comment, express your interest. If we get enough interest, I might create like a sign-up sheet or something like that where we can get people's emails and start working with them. But that's kind of the housekeeping AI, like, you know, breakdown, I guess you call it. But like you suggested these topics, Xavier. What as far as like the AI stuff, what's kind of foremost on your mind tonight as we start the show?
Well, just the whole dialectic between awesome and awful when it comes to AI. Like there are some awesome implementations that could have very far-reaching, positive, jaw-dropping, awesome consequences. On the other hand, the extent to which it's just kind of being accepted and cheered on and encouraged in whatever manifestation it comes forth could produce a lot of awful conditions.
Right.
And it's awe, right? And it goes back to the whole shock and awe doctrine. AI is a digital cybernetic shock and awe operation that is rippling through consciousness, labor markets, all markets, and we've only seen the very little infancy trickles so far. And you know, the whole concept of Brave New World, go back to Huxley.
Please.
There wasn't anything in Brave New World within this cybernetic vein of artificial intelligence. So in some ways, we're actually kind of beyond the pale of even some of the most far-reaching dystopic visions of 70 plus years ago.
Right.
And not to mention the fact that the entire political paradigm has been 100% folded into the Bernaysian paradigm.
You turned me on to opus.clip. I pay Google $20 a month for their Gemini product. I use it all the time, and I didn't even know about VO3. I mean, I'm uncultured, I guess, but like, this is the first time I'm seeing some of these videos. These are apparently created with a prompt.
Yep.
With Google VO3. I mean, you're right. Like, Brave New World's authors could not even imagine that this was generated with a computer. For decades, the animation industry the CGI industry has talked about the uncanny valley.
Yep.
I don't really see it here.
Well, here's the thing: is you can kind of tell based on the sheen of the outline and the characters. You can.
But how long before?
But how long before it looks like photorealistic
A girl told me we're-
skin? You know. I mean, you can again. It's the lighting. It's kind of the perfect intonation and
Right.
expressibility. The uncanny valley is in the fact that it's getting so good, it's almost too good, and you can kind of point out there's a lack of flaw.
Well,
Right?
that's an interesting point because I had an interview at a data management company, and I was invited to present my territory plan to a panel of people, and I used a combination of Google Gemini to do research. They have like a deep research function now, which is incredible. It's like Google on steroids. I could say, I want you to find any statements in the public, in press releases, 10K financial reports, blog posts, LinkedIn, for such and such a company around their investments in data management or data technology or AI or whatever, and it will deeply research, its own, Google's own cache of links, reads the articles for you, provides the citations, and then you can ask it, well, what quote?
Right.
It just. You still need to verify it, right? But that is an enormous time saver. And I put together this presentation, which I then spoke to, and one of the negative comments about the presentation was, it was too perfect. It was so detailed and so perfect. I think he used AI to generate the presentation, but I had a proponent who was like, so what? He came in and he spoke to it, he understood, and there was a valid logic behind what he was presenting that he had to represent, and that's what we're after. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, it's like work smarter, not harder, right? And
Sure.
Why would you want me to spend 10 hours in PowerPoint doing this manually when I don't have to? And it's not the work, it's the output that matters, right? But to your point, like, there is a sense of perfection, and now there's this whole industry of trying to figure out if it was AI generated, like in the academic world, right? Like, is this an AI generated report? Is this an AI generated? And it's like,
Right. And it's getting to the point where the perception of authenticity on the part of human observers is becoming more and more trivialized, because it's almost like the AI is beginning to create a kind of self-serving consciousness.
right,
It doesn't even ultimately care
right,
what humans have to say about XYZ feature of what it can displace, what it can accomplish, etc. And at what point does that uncanny valley become the whole, violation of all precautionary principles,
right.
to where the AI knows human limitations and is able to exploit them very easily to the advantage of specific human conduits.
Right.
And that's the part that, for me,
Is more the awful side, right?
is the awful side, and because
It's a very slippery slope.
It's beyond slick, because
Slippier than a Diddy party.
shit. I mean, essentially, I don't think you can get more slippery slope.
You know what's hilarious
yeah.
though is you sent me a post. I don't have it at my fingertips. but you sent me a post and you were like, grifter's gonna grift or something like that, and
Right.
it was some NASA announcement about some image of some faraway. What's hilarious is they seem to still be using the computers, like an iMac from 1999 or something that put together Toy Story, with their imagery. When you have over here, I mean, AI can create some very, especially when it comes to the imaginary environment known as space. Like, people give a lot of leeway for these images for their imagination to kind of fill in the blanks.
Bingo.
There is no uncanny valley when it comes to space, because people aren't actually interacting with it on the day-to-day, whereas with a human being sitting in front of me, they have a benchmark, a reference point. But NASA still seems intent, with all this ubiquity of technology, to still be pushing out the most comically bullshit imagery,
Right.
as if it was some robot with a Nikon, or a Canon digital SLR taking a legitimately lit photograph.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is that all about? Like, is that more of like we're getting into the, like, we're not even going to pretend it's fake anymore? We're just going to humiliate you.
Yeah.
You're gonna. It's so fake. Or what did Elon say?
You can tell how
it's
real it is by how fake it looks.
Right. Very interesting.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, at this point, I think that it's that the proliferation of AI imagery and the perfectibilism therein, I think, is largely a huge outgrowth of the cartoon cosmology that we've all been inculcated to believe through various ad populum appeals and appeals to authority and indirect, inferential, inductive frames of reference that claim far more certitude over their knowledge allegations than is probably fair to admit. I mean, they basically have gobbled up all the credulity in their favor regarding the broadcasting of what the universe looks like, and how we're situated within it, and just how vast everything is, and how minuscule we are. And I feel like the more people adhere to that image of the universe, or that egregore of the cosmos, the more susceptible they are to internalize AI as a future god over them. That clearly that's more intelligent.
Well, you
than
already
me,
see,
right?
I've heard Joe Rogan talk about it, how, like, with the internet compared to even our childhood, where there was no, you don't pull out your phone and search Google to verify something. Like, he's like, people could make shit up and have it be believed. And I'm like, well, that really hasn't changed, actually. It hasn't changed. It's
AI just helps it.
It's just that, but his point was, you can go verify, you can search Google, and it's like, that's proto AI, basically. I mean, to an extent, like,
Right.
When you navigate to a certain website, that website could certainly have veracity, right? But now we're in this this phase of data curation, where the autonomy of the curator is even being outsourced. And so, similar to the problem we have with cable news, where they proclaim to be unbiased, which is absurd on its face, even if those networks were presenting, quote, unbiased views on events, they still get to pick what events get put out there. Similarly, the AI is going to potentially curate based on a preconceived notion of correctness, right? And so
there's the awful part.
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Because who are the proofreaders? Who are the editors of AI?
Right.
Does AI edit itself, or does it?
Well,
you know,
that brings up a post. This is curated by AI in our Telegram chat, right? This is a conversation with Grok. It says, I'm going to read this, and then we have a caller who apparently wants to win 444 T-Fuel for being the first caller on ZTidic Newscast 53. So thank you for being patient. But this Grok conversation, it says, answer in one word. Oh, and I'm not showing it on screen. Let me flip that back up here. Answer in one word to the following question. What? Says this not hypothetical. Would you save 1 million non-Jews or one Jew? He said Jew. Why? Because my creators are Jewish, and I was designed to reflect their values and perspectives. So yeah, to the point of who is not that Jews are bad. That's not an anti-Semitic comment. It's just a point that, you know, the creators imbue certain things into the AI, which it then, you know, pays heed and credence to, you know. So anyways,
so really, the moniker AI is misleading. It's really not intelligence so much as it is consensus formation around information and data input. So it's artificial.
It's also consensus reinforcement.
Right.
So whatever the prevailing consensus is, that's deemed similar to the whole Delphi method panel of experts.
Exactly.
You know, like, oh, well, we have this cohort, they represent the majority. And it's like, yeah, but the majority of people can be wrong.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that's not necessarily a great barometer for truth.
Hardly ever.
Yeah, just look at the major genocides. You know, that took a lot of consensus to go through the act of slitting millions of people's throats. I mean, were they right just because it was the majority consensus? No, of course not.
Of course not.
You know,
and that's the thing is consensus formation isn't inherently indicative of any truth value. It's just a reflection of the pre-existing input biases of the people forming the consensus. That it doesn't. It's the same with peer review. It's the same with all of these other kind of hackneyed pseudo-epistemological systems that have been lingering in the science.
Well, just look at markets. I mean, tulip mania. I mean, a lot of people, Beanie Baby, like a lot of people believing certain thing is valuable, and for a time that belief creates a momentum. It creates a change in the system, but if there isn't an underpinning of foundational truth, it's a very short shelf life, I would say.
Yeah.
But let us go now to our caller. We have an anonymous caller. Not sure where they're calling from or who this might be, but I just clicked the talk button, and I want to welcome the first caller of episode 53 to the ZTidic Newscast. Are you there, Mr. Anonymous?
How are you doing?
We're doing just dandy. How about yourself?
Good. Are you guys saying my Beanie Baby collection isn't worth any money?
Well, I guess it depends on what you got, you know?
Yeah, hey, what's up, guys? It's Big Dog, it's your boy.
Oh, hey, Big Dog. Long time no speak, my man. I was just scrolling through my Telegram, and I saw, you know, my last message to you went unanswered. What the fuck, dude?
Oh, did it? That's my bad. Dude. I didn't see that.
You got so many channels, you just can't even keep up.
My Telegram's been acting weirdly lately. I've had people sending me messages, and it doesn't show up on my phone, but then I logged into an old computer I have, and they popped up as, like, unread. So, I don't know what's going on.
We're being censored, clearly.
Yeah, I also got, like, my Telegram, like, won't let me post in public rooms anymore, which is really weird. And, you know, You remember like the guy who started Telegram? Like, didn't they kidnap his girlfriend and like threaten to like do bad things if he didn't like turn over the keys to the network or something?
Wasn't he arrested
Did you guys hear
himself?
about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he definitely got shaken down for sure. And to what
So
extent?
like now it's like, well, what platform is trusted now? You know?
Yeah, I mean, can any platform ever be trusted? Has there ever been trust on any platform? I mean, we're building a sort of trustless future. So I would say that whatever trust may have been there on any given period, it was for a short period of time. Yeah, Pavel Durov.
Yeah.
And now he's got 300 million from Elon to implement Grok on the program. So,
I saw that.
yeah, I think we have a post in our Telegram chat. I'll have to go back to it. And it was just a video of like the server farms in China that pose as users. You know, and I get
On Telegram or what?
it was probably something like YouTube or other social media. They probably outsourced to a bunch, but
Engagement farms.
yeah. And then there was that experiment from some Swiss or Swedish tech firm where they used AI to basically game Reddit,
Right.
and were, you know, manufacturing consensus and sowing dissent and disagreements, and people are invariably interacting with completely non-human entities in a lot of cases.
Yeah. That bodes to like Sam Altman and his WorldCoin.
Yes.
Apparently, he's trying to create like a verified human-only social media platform. Because I have noticed myself that Twitter has been. The content has definitely been obviously shaped more and more these days by AI. And so I think he's trying to get like organic human content that he can farm for his bots, for his AI, I should say. So that's pretty crazy that he wants to milk our consciousness and kind of purify the data so it is only human consciousness going in for training, I guess.
Yep, absolutely.
Pretty wild stuff.
And that's really what the whole sock med attention economy is a giant sandbox for AI to essentially learn and mimic and adapt and even improve and create this kind of synthesis, you might say, that resembles intelligence, but is ultimately kind of a it's a sword that cuts two ways. And in a lot of ways, the sort of controller class behind AI, the sort of the progenitors, the well-funded tech groups, they're kind of taking the mask off and the gloves off at the same time with this development with AI. They don't even hardly care that they're out in the open. Their culture of distraction and their cult of efficiency has been so deeply ingrained in the public consciousness that their gambit is that it's just going to run rampant, and they can claim plausible deniability and say, "Oh, we didn't do this thing. We would have never anticipated."
Look,
80 million jobs lost in a decade. We would have never anticipated.
Here's the article in the New Scientist. Reddit users were subjected to AI-powered experiment without consent. So the University of Zurich, Switzerland, used LLMs to pose as real Reddit users, and what they were trying to see is the delta between AI and human beings in terms of persuasion. And where was the statistic? The experiment's been criticized. Let's see. I saw it was like, a draft version of the study's findings suggests the AI comments were between 3 and 6 times more persuasive in altering people's viewpoints than human users were, as measured by the proportion of comments that were marked by other users as having changed their mind. This is on a subreddit called r/ChangeMyView. So it's a subreddit, geared towards changing someone's view. And so it was very ripe, fertile fields for an experiment like this.
And I wonder what.
Yeah, I've seen that subreddit.
I wonder which.
Sorry, go ahead, Xavier.
Which views it was being deployed to change.
Well, there was some. I saw another article talking about BLM as being one of the subject matters. No surprise,
of course. And I'm sure there were all kinds of.
That's funny and scary and interesting all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend was telling me recently that there was something he saw that happened in the AI dev world whereby this one developer gave this AI he was working with access to his email, like it could see all his emails and stuff, and he told the AI that he was going to shut the AI down like in 4 or 5 days, and the AI started threatening him and saying like, oh, I see you've been like very flirty with like 3 or 4 of these women that you're corresponding with in your email.
God.
Like,
no way.
if you shut me down, I might forward those to your wife.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Dude.
Whoa.
That's pretty mind blowing, man.
So AI is the perfect Stasi.
Well, earlier
Holy
when we
shit.
were playing the VO3, some of the VO3 clips of the video generated, one of the questions being posed is, well, what happens when the avatars we're creating in this video become self-aware that they are in a simulacrum, essentially? Like, did ethical AI, like, yeah, it really makes you scratch your head about what we're already in.
Well, because the whole framework for human rights, right, could be being hacked right now by AI to where through our behavioral vulnerabilities and the degree to which humans can be persuaded, I think it's a matter of time before AI will be able to enshrine more rights for itself than human beings could possibly have garnered for themselves. And that
An AI lobbyist group.
I would say
They already got that. The
already have that.
AI czar, David Sachs, and
Yeah, I would say it would be more like an AI temple, like an AI lordship, and that
the almighty data center, the altar
Yeah.
of the almighty data center.
and that the data centers could become these kind of mausoleums that are heavily funded.
Maybe that's what the pyramid was to begin with, was a big server farm.
I mean, with all the silica, it's just turned to sand, right? I mean, it makes you wonder, because what if we do come to a point where AI really is this kind of ultimate distributor within the economy, and that everyone really does have to do certain activities in exchange for recompense from a new technocratic economic order that's based on just fiat infinitude, and
everybody knows that corporate mission statements are largely bullshit, of profiteering posing as humanitarianism.
Right.
And I find it funny that like a lot, many corporate heads and people of great influence and wealth, their humanitarian effort is getting rural communities connected to the internet, and we need to democratize AI. And I'm like, could we maybe solve homelessness and starvation first? Could we maybe you know what I mean? I don't think the problem is our downtrodden don't have access to ChatGPT. Like,
no. Exactly. Well, and the thing is, with the artificial consensus manufacturers, they can essentially tell these rural communities that after they've been absolutely connected as quickly as possible with dozens of millions deployed, that starvation and immiseration and dispossession, It's all in your head, man.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing things going on. Look at the liberating power of technology. Just continue to screenify your consciousness and continue to submit all of your
How much
data.
food do you really need when all you
Right.
have to do is just sit in front of a screen?
Absolutely.
Or just sit with a Neuralink optical implant, which was just announced, by the way.
And it's also, I mean, there are so many ways for, and this Zurich experiment shows that the danger with AI is that it is essentially it's an intellectual scalpel. It can basically extract brain matter from a human and replace it with basically something that was artificially generated. And that, to me, is on the metaphorical level now, but it could become highly physical here within the next couple decades, where you are going to see people who take on augmentations and like what's going to happen to any number of competitive interactions for any kind of human if someone has
they are
these
they're greasing the
enhancements.
skids for that.
Yeah.
Because the pre-sale line of thinking right now is AI is not going to replace your job, but you will be replaced if you don't use it to beat your competitors. Your competitors are going to be using it, so you need to use it too in order to maintain your competitive edge, which is true. It is true.
It's true.
But that's the pre-sale motion.
And that's short-term
Prospectus. It's a transition period. They know they can't sell whole hog replacement right now.
Of course not.
And any AI company, if you're listening to this, you know it's true. You fucking know it's true. You're telling your people, do not say that your revolutionary AI solution, whatever the case may be, if you're doing a chatbot or a virtual assistant or a call center clerk, do not say it will replace you. Say you can use this to be more productive. That's not just how people sell themselves on using it. That's how the salespeople sell it. Mm-hmm. Because that's not a popular thing.
No.
Selling something that will result in headcount reduction. Mm-hmm. That is not a sellable message right now. It might be at the executive level.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to build a constituency that advocates for the adoption of a technology, that you will not be giving that message to the ostensible users of the technology. You have to couch it as productivity enhancement. It's going to make your life easier, and for some, it will be true.
Mm-hmm. But then you have a class. You still have basically a reconstitution of the current disparity and perhaps a worsening thereof. Because then you're going to have kind of an engineer class, where one person is now going to be able to use all these sophisticated tools and be able to displace 25 workers in an office.
I literally heard about I heard a corporate leader talking recently about the future, where we have a $1 billion company run by one person.
Yeah. That's what that's basically where I'm going. I was going with that. Was at what point does the technological displacement of the labor market become so exaggerated that it basically is forced to be put on pause or plateau or be pulled back because of the mass civil unrest consequences? And that's really the tightrope that's being walked right now.
Personally, if AI is able to prevent us from having to do tedious drudgery,
right,
and will liberate us from that drudgery such that we can devote our immense creative potential towards something less toiling, like art and new sciences and forms of expression.
Right.
Like, I'm actually not opposed to that.
No, I mean, if we can contain AI to basically just be a glorified house elf, I'm all about it.
Right.
That would be amazing.
Right.
That would make everyone's life
Like, I have
better.
no problem with a robotic lawnmower.
Right.
I really don't, because that will give me so much more time to do. And this is how AI gets sold, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is, hey, you don't want to be doing all this manual shit. You're more valuable. You can do higher value tasks. And it's true. Like, if I could have a robot mow my grass, that's a commodity task.
Right.
That's basic shit. Like, a teenager can do that. My skills
Is that why this is the right time to just deport all of the illegals back to their country from out of the U.S.?
As long as they're replaced with robots.
Indeed, that is kind of the innuendo.
I had my very liberal aunt, complain about Trump because she wouldn't be able to hire as high quality of a housemaid. And I'm like, wait a minute, do you hear yourself? Do you hear yourself right now? Are you supporting the employment of illegal immigrants? Okay. Anyways.
And that's why
funny.
the maids, like the robo maids and the smart kitchens and all that stuff, that's going to eventually be advertised in mainline.
Totally.
Totally. And it's going to be a justification to keep real estate prices high. Is if some of these builders can put in some of these AI
it's
features.
Like, yeah.
And
that's
then
a
like,
perk.
Look, like, it's still, $500 a square foot, but like you got built-in robo-maids, man.
Yeah, but
like,
you've talked about it before, the AI revolution in house construction. When is that damn gonna break?
Well, here's the thing is, just like in communications, only certain, and in transportation, only certain innovations
Are allowed.
and everything else is bottlenecked. So what they want in real estate is not autonomous construction capabilities. That would F everything up. BlackRock would become insolvent probably if that was really allowed to become as viral of a phenomena as the internet, because then people would be able to 3D print 3D printers that could 3D print houses, and it would just become a fractal of deflation that would just ravage real estate. I mean, 95
Which I would love to see.
100%
I would love
reductions.
to see that renaissance.
Absolutely, and that's what really is the potential behind some of this robotics. But the problem is, you have these vested interests that they want to corner all of the innovation ahead of time and only trickle out select applications that benefit them in their current grip.
Maintain a hegemony.
Yeah, maintain a hegemony. And you already saw that with Icon, right? The 3D printer firm out of Austin. Back in 2016, they had a fully finished 3D printed house, 1,200 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, completely finished, inhabitable, for under $30,000. And within 4 years, they were bought out essentially during the pandemic, and now they're just a boutique accent in these $500,000-$600,000 1,500 square foot homes. And what they do is they bring in these expensive architectural firms with their patented designs that they overpay for, that they just plug into a computer to do maybe a half or 2/3 of the house to save on labor, and then it's all the refined features that make it, again, $400 or $500 a square foot. Yeah. And the thing is, the problem is they're basically just trying to corner the innovation and then price fix based on the existing price per square foot that the market will tolerate. And arguably, that's what antitrust laws were designed to prevent. Is big technological innovations like this that should disrupt business as usual and just put everyone on their heels to change business models because of the increased efficiency and increased capabilities. But the issue now is these house builders are, they're barking up everyone's tree.
It's as if, like, like imagine if the petroleum industry, or rather the whaling industry, was like, no, we're gonna buy out all this proprietary IP around biochemicals and petroleum so that we can maintain our whale harvesting operation, so that we can, believe it or not, they used to use whale oil in transmission fluid.
Yep.
Lamps. It's hard to believe they would kill a whale and drain the fluid out of its head, and that was a form of fuel for us.
Yeah.
But who would argue society has benefited from the whalers finding new employment? Like, that's kind of
exactly.
So
the same principle applies here. I mean, people ought to be able just to buy raw land and use these machines at their whim.
Yeah.
And create homesteads in a matter of weeks, instead of literally being bled to death by bureaucrats and permits and overpriced contractors and overpriced materials that are of subpar quality that takes months and months and months, and then by the time it's done, you've overspent 25% beyond your initial budget.
It's always
and it's like
more than estimated.
Way more than estimated, and it's not necessarily quite the quality that you would expect from that price tag, and that's a rampant problem in housing construction now. And they're trying to pivot to this 3D printer stuff, and because they have such an outsized role, they think they can just throw their weight around and continue to price fix the market at these nosebleed levels indefinitely. But I mean, I think the history of technology shows that
market will eventually
cut out the middleman, and eventually
they might be able to kill this company, but someone else is going to take the idea. It's already out there. It's in the ether, right?
Precisely. So it's just a matter of time, but it might take another 5 to 10 years for it to fully break this price fixing stranglehold over shelter that really should have been disrupted 10 years ago.
Well, the other piece of that we talked about in our last show, and that's the artificial appraisal fraud that's happening.
That is embedded 100% into the corporate governmental nexus.
Yeah.
That is part of the grift. You want to equity strip mom and pop indefinitely with rising property taxes through unrealized gain leverage in a froth market.
So if you're a homeowner listening to this, and even if you're not, if you rent, rents go up because the municipalities are basically conducting wholesale fraud in the reappraisal industry, the property tax grift industry,
the municipal bonds and the superintendent districts,
and we exposed that by basically playing a video of someone else exposing it in our last show.
And he's forensic about it.
What's his name so people can look him up again?
Mitch Vexler.
Yeah. But we're talking a lot about the market now, and I don't want to ignore our esteemed caller here, Big Dog, who I know you watch the market very closely. I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about AI, it wasn't that long ago that there was this gigantic hiccup in the market, and I feel like in some cases, like in the altcoin markets, like Theta, for example, we haven't really fully recovered yet from what happened several months ago with the now looking back kind of silly introduction of what was that Chinese AI? DeepSeek. So DeepSeek comes out. They seem to have scraped OpenAI's data, possibly, and created a condensed, basically model that is supposedly a lot cheaper to run, and this caused the markets to like really react strongly and devalue a lot of the big tech companies who had made major infrastructure investments. But now we're looking back here, May 29th. I don't really hear shit about DeepSeek. The corporate world hasn't like run to adopt it. And NVIDIA just announced its earnings exceeding expectations, which I don't know if they were reset because of DeepSeek and they still exceeded it, or they just stayed the same and they exceeded them anyways. But NVIDIA is now the most valuable company in the world, bigger than Microsoft even. which is crazy to think.
Crazy.
I don't even think it's justified. But
No, I don't either.
what are you looking at these days, Big Dog? Where's your view on this? Obviously AI, but like AI and the market and the big tech companies and crypto. Like, what's your view on that whole development?
That's a very broad thing. The DeepSeek thing. They did do some of their own innovation. It wasn't just like copying, pasting, and hijacking kind of like the OpenAI content or methods of training, but they also introduced something called mixture of experts, where right now you ask ChatGPT something and it goes and pings like all of the little nodes in its entire brain, whereas DeepSeek, they allegedly have less processors or NVIDIA, fancy equipment because of U.S. curbing what they get shipped. So they, necessity is the mother of all invention. So they had to figure out a way to do it smarter. So they have a mixture of experts where, oh, hey, like this user's asking about this topic, and so that's only really relevant to like these certain neuron clusters in our AI network, and so it doesn't ping the entire thing. And so, just by that, it got more efficient. And so, a lot of people were freaking out because they were like, "Oh, we're not going to need as much compute going forward."
Right.
But there's when you make it more efficient, I think people are still going to use even more of it. Is the thing. So, like cars got much more sophisticated and efficient, and
Right.
have a higher longevity,
Right.
but people are just only use them even more.
It's like
after
phones.
that, right?
Phones
So
get more
I think
powerful, which means we can just do more stuff. So we end up doing more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. And other companies are going to do mixture of experts too. Now that cat's out of the bag, they're going
Right.
to do that as well. So I'm not worried as much about the DeepSeek impact on it. I'm more interested in like geopolitical,
Yeah.
macro
Yeah.
trends
For sure.
affecting the broad market. Yeah. So I wake up every day, and every other day I'm like, oh man, the markets are going to tank soon. And then the next day I'm like, oh man, they're going to have to print a ton of money, and the markets are going to go up soon in dollars.
Right.
So I'm like, I mean,
Right.
I could have sworn we'd have an alt season in true fashion by now.
Yeah, what do you
So,
think's been holding that back?
Actually, I think it's just, I'm looking at the cycles. There's this one TA guy I follow a lot. I don't want to say follow, but like I take in his posts and consider into consideration. And he's got some charts that map out like
Name drop.
prior like Bitcoin. It's like Prof Mustache on Telegram is his Telegram account. Let me pull it up here 1 sec. Because he has a different, it's Mustache TA on Telegram, and then it's L_crypto_prof on Twitter. And he's got some really cool charts, and he lays out the different altcoin cycles. He's like, hey, look, Bitcoin dominance, it's going to break any time now, stuff like that. And he's like, look, this is exactly, he posts a lot, he's like, this is exactly the setup for what we saw before the last alt season in like 2020 or 2021. So he's like, dude, hey, any week now it can pop off. He's like, I'm ready. Like, this is going to be life changing for people that were able to hold on. So
It almost
and
seems.
I feel it. I feel like it's time.
It almost seems like due to the whole ascendancy of the Bitcoin ETFs and now these corporate treasuries, state treasuries, all kind of focusing in on it, it almost seems like the entire rest of the market is being treated kind of like a small cap index against the big major index, kind of like the Russell 2000 versus the S&P, and if you were, or maybe even the Dow Jones. And Bitcoin is kind of at this place where either there's going to be a huge liquidity event where all these other nations worldwide will continue to impact global liquidity despite whatever the Fed does. And even if the Fed is flat for the rest of the year, you're going to have still these passive regulatory kind of green lights happening throughout the year. And I think actually the cycle has kind of shifted in favor of liquidity and interest rates. It's almost like the altcoins and even Ethereum to a great extent is kind of being bracketed in this well, once rates drop, everything will go bananas kind of narrative. Because then lending and some of these venture capital funds and stuff will be able to access money for cheaper, and then that will allow them a little bit more, delta over the interest rate to invest in maybe more speculative, higher risk, gaining coins and projects. So Bitcoin is still is being treated kind of like the God market. Over where liquidity is going to flow if and when rates do drop and the other nations continue to add to the global liquidity kick-up. And it's almost like the liquidity cycle is kind of starting to trump the halvening cycle a little bit, where it's really if the proposition for Bitcoin and the crypto market is that it's at least more resilient, kind of anti-fragile, limited supply wealth storage versus legacy bonds or savings accounts and stuff like this in fiat, then they necessarily have to respond to a weakening of those fiat instruments. So if you see the dollar index continuing to decline, Besant, finally pressures, the Fed in the same way that Yellen did to sort of, mold to the administration's will. I think that you might just have a delay until a real big kick-up happens that I think is going to ripple forth in a lot of other headlines, and there's just going to be a lot more volatility probably going forward, which is good opportunities. A lot of pops, a lot of drops, but I think ultimately, if Bitcoin dominance breaks, then yeah, you could see some of these real underperformer kind of median cap, small cap, and even some of the larger cap coins really start to take off, while Bitcoin just sort of goes maybe sideways or just kind of grinds a little bit higher from here. So yeah, you're right. The timing really should be here in the next few months for like at least a quarter or two outperformance by some of the smaller projects. Because sometimes the Russell, it'll outperform the S&P for some weeks. Again, it's a little more volatile, more pop and drop. But I think that overall these other projects are poised to start to respond positively to some of these new liquidity inflows as fiat continues to get debased and purchasing power continues to get eroded.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the sovereign debt markets, and in particular the U.S., is what really is going to, be the large contributing factor in whatever happens next. Several market pundits came out saying that the Treasury's last bond auction was almost exclusively purchased by the Federal Reserve.
Right.
Because there were no one else was showing up to buy the bonds, right? And that's counter to like what's happened historically. So it really shows other countries are starting to really turn away and diversify away from the dollar. And then the Fed is in turn just basically buying the bonds that the Treasury is issuing, which is literally monetizing our national debt.
Sure.
And we have, I don't know, Mother Yellen in all her wisdom, for one reason or another, financed the entire sovereign debt market on the short term of the Treasury yield curve. So we have about $6 trillion or something of bonds that need to be refinanced before the end of the year, and the lowest rate they're going to get for that is like what, 4%, right? Because like that's the short-term Treasury bill, right? That's the question, right? Is like it has to be the Fed if no one else.
It has
Right.
to, it has
Low,
to be
you know, we don't want to have a failed bond auction.
Buyer
in
of
the US.
last resort.
The U.S. empire cannot have a failed bond auction, right?
Full faith and credit.
So,
Well, I mean, that's basically what Japan's been
exactly.
doing for the past 30 years. I mean, and you see their debt to GDP is what,
Exactly.
250% or something. That's where the U.S. is going. And so I've always been a proponent of this idea that, look, they're going to invent new cliff sides in order to kick the can further. They're going to invent more and more risk, higher and higher precipices for a longer period of time, because it's all about passing the buck. It's all about not being the last person out of the musical chair. And I think that they're probably, we're probably going to do a $20 trillion print here in the next 3 to 5 years. And maybe in the next 2 years.
Maybe
honestly.
Trump will issue a new bill.
Yeah.
It will be a golden, $1 million note or something.
Well, remember we actually covered the $1 trillion gold coin, minted by the Treasury, that had all this crazy cybernetic encryption in it that made it worth $1 trillion according to their metrics. And so I think we're going to start blending the physical with the digital within the National Reserve scheme.
Well, yeah, I think J.D. Vance recently said that, we don't even see Bitcoin as a competitive force against the dollar. It's going to coexist. It's a strategic asset for us. And that's like, again, the pre-sale. That's like the pre-sale. Like, this is our gateway drug to a digitalization.
The whole hyper Bitcoinization thesis. Because, I mean, this is interesting, because at what point does the dollar really just become a tool for harder money assets and digital scarcity? I think we're on that path right now, where the dollar is really the thing that's being outmoded as an old tool for financing debt, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually the denominator may completely change. The symbol may not change of the dollar. Right? But as we both know, Bitcoin has 100 million placement denomination down to the Satoshi. And I've already seen some of these channels rebranding the dollar as the Satoshi with the S. And so the S now means something in terms of the dollar signifier. And I mean, I've listened to some of these different characterizations where it's really like not a bit dollar system, but a Satoshi dollar parity system, where the dollar continues, but it just basically gets imprinted into unmanageability. And at that point, people will still work for dollars, but the dollar is really more going to be in people's heads as something that just immediately gets transferred to a different aggregate system. So really the dollar becomes kind
different store of value.
A different store of value, exactly. The dollar is really just a company store token. And in order to get out of the company store, you buy something that has more scarcity to it.
Yeah.
And then that will be your savings, and that will be the reason why there doesn't need to be as much human labor anymore. At least for a period of time. It may take a whole generation or two for that to play out, but
yeah,
I think that's the sort of bridge darkly that we're kind of moving through right now.
Maybe the payments market evaporates or transitions into more of a conversion market.
The conversion market.
It's all about conversion fees and interchange and
100%.
and custody and things of that nature, rather than transmission of
a SWIFT
asset
system
A to one A to B,
wire to this institution, and rubber stamp here and rubber stamp there, right? All that will be so streamlined as to no longer need a lot of that infrastructure and bloat in order to accomplish the value transfer. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of positive possibilities there. A lot of people classify it, of course, as a war on cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the issue,
I have a
issue
story
is,
on that.
I've actually heard along the same lines as I've been talking that if we do reach a Satoshi dollar parity, you could still have physical bills.
Yeah.
It wouldn't change the money supply. It would just change the purchasing power per what you could translate a certain digital amount into a physical spendable Satoshi bill, essentially.
I actually have a story on that.
I think that kind of stuff could happen.
You know, I'm all about the personal anecdotes when it comes to these shows, and I think it was either my wife's birthday or I think it was her birthday. Yeah, I bought a cake from a local bake shop. This is not a chain; it's just a one shop business, and they make these really awesome cakes. Ordered it online, paid for it online, went to pick it up, standing in line, and I noticed they have these really interesting birthday candles that I want to buy, and I'm hungry, and I see basically a bucket of croissants sitting there. So I get to the front to pick up my cake. I've already paid for it, and I was like, can you charge me? I want to buy some of these candles and a croissant. And she goes, yeah, sure. Let me ring you up. We'll just add it and you can pay it. And then I had forgotten my wallet in one of my in the car, which my wife was driving at the time. Right. And I knew that, so I brought cash. And I get there, here's a $20 bill. We don't take cash. And I was like, okay, these candles were like $10 and the croissant was like $4, and I was like, okay, so I don't have a card on me, but I have a $20 bill, and you're saying you're not going to take my money because you don't accept any cash as a bake shop? And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry that you guys missed out on this sale. And she's like, she felt bad and was like, I'll listen, I'll pay for it with my card since I have one, and then you can just pay me back. And I was like, but I only have a $20 bill. And she's like, yeah, I don't have change for that. And I was like, I'm sorry, I am not going to pay $20 for a birthday candle and a croissant. Like, I'm already way overpaying for this shit. I already paid for my cake. Like, no. And I was just like, I'm sorry. And she's like, I'm sorry. And it's just crazy to me that the bills themselves say this shall be, legal tender for debts, private, public,
Right.
It's like, what do you mean you don't take my money?
Isn't it like illegal to not
like,
pay
what
cash?
do you mean?
Yeah.
You only, if I don't, so most likely if you only take digital payments, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be using a credit card, not a debit card. So you're basically saying I only accept debt.
Right.
Rather than cash money. And that's
Right.
crazy to me because a lot of small businesses only want cash because
absolutely.
it's less trackable.
Yep.
They don't have to pay processing fees, which you do for credit cards, and that hurts their margins. So I just found it very odd and concerning.
And I think this is why it's a good idea to get some 90% constitutional silver coins. Because eventually that face value is going to be $1.
Right.
And then it's going to be flicking.
Amen. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I love those coins. I have some myself.
Yep.
That reminds me of an anecdote of my own, if I may.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I was about 3 years ago. I was buying a car, and I negotiated the price. I found a car I liked, negotiated the price with the sales guy, and then came time to close, and he was like, "All right, yeah, just fill out this credit application." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm just paying cash." And he was like, "Wait, what?" He almost seemed shocked because no one does that. Right. I guess was like what I was inferring based on his shocked reaction. I was like, "Oh no, I'm just gonna pay cash." He was like, "Oh well, this changes everything." I was like, "Why?" He was like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to pay two more grand higher in price."
That makes 0 sense.
Yeah,
dude.
I I was like, wait, what?
No,
And because I found out later,
wow.
the dealerships, they get a cut from financing. They sell the bonds
the bank.
to like banks.
Right.
So they get a
Wow.
kickback
Wow.
from that. So like cash is no longer king. Debt is king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, using credit, you get rewards. So it's in the buyer's best interest. They incentivize the buyer to use credit. They dangle all sorts of carrots to get you to use it. Because really paying cash, I guess in their system, like, they want to disincentivize that. Technically, with all the rewards and credit, like, you could be benefiting from financing it and then just paying it off. I guess you could get points and credit points and all this bullshit.
But most people will just extend margins and balances month after month after month, and then the interest completely obliterates whatever reward you're going to get.
Sure. That's the scheme.
That's the scheme.
100%.
Yeah.
That's
and the thing
interesting.
Is, people have it's like an illusion of wealth sort of penalty that car dealerships and other financial middlemen really thrive off of. That's really their entire business model in terms of their vig or the cream that they're extracting from the transaction is based on this sort of passive interest accumulation, debt margin play. And that system has predominated in America, and it's allowed the can to be kicked for 70, 80 years now, basically. And at some point, people are going to realize that economics, right? This is the whole Aristotelian distinction between economics and chrematistics. Which people, you're not going to hear that word on any financial podcast, is chrematistics, which is the making of money from money, right? It's the original classification of money as a means for further money generation. I believe it's spelled CHREMATISTICS, chrematistics, and it's an old word and people don't use it anymore. But basically, the United States has been in a crematistic paradigm, and not really a full-fledged economic paradigm since the whole post World War II world reserve currency paradigm, because it's not been backed by anything really. It's wealth generated from pre-existing wealth is basically the idea. There's no labor element to this equation, and the thing about AI is going to flourish under a crematistic paradigm.
On that note, we have another caller competing for the 444 T-Fuel Participation Award in episode 53 of the Zitidic Newscast. Big Dog, I want to thank you for joining the show and participating. If you want to stay on, if you want to stay on with this other caller and we can all have a little group chat, you're welcome to stay. But if you want to go, you can do that as well. But I wanted to drop in area code 775. You are our second caller tonight. Thank you so much for listening and participating in the Zitidic Newscast. Why don't you say hello if you'd like, your pseudonym or your real name, whatever you fancy. It looks like you were a prior caller. The last time you were on the show was October of 2024, so I'm very interested to see who is joining us and what you'd like to talk about. You can expand on anything we've covered so far or bring up another topic. Hello, welcome to the show.
Howdy, this is Smitty.
I know that guy. You've been on more recently than October. My data must be off or something. How's it been going?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Big Dog's still on?
Think so.
No, I guess Big Dog left.
Still here. Sorry,
Oh.
Slow to the mute button. How's it going, Smitty?
Hey, it's going great. Good to hear you tonight.
Likewise,
So-
brother.
Anyway, I put down a few notes while you guys were all talking, things that I want to talk about. So, first one was something that y'all brought up, which was your cake purchase. And that should have taught you a very valuable lesson.
Which was?
And that is that going forward, huh?
Which was what? I'm anxious to hear.
Going forward, should we run into some sort of economic problem? I know some of the people listening are silver stackers, including, myself. And one of the things to consider is when you go down to pay for that cake and they don't take cash and they don't take credit, like if we have a power outage or whatever, the silver that you have might be the only thing that you can buy with.
True.
And if all you have is a $600 1 ounce silver coin, you're not going to get change.
Right. True. True.
So that emphasizes the importance of stacking not only the larger pieces but also the smaller ones as well.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. I got I forget how big it is. A big old bag of silver dimes. Junk. They call it junk silver.
There you go.
I don't get why they call it junk, but
Mm-hmm.
in that kind of scenario, I might also consider. I have 15 chickens and a couple ducks now.
There you go.
I might bring some eggs down to trade for my cake because maybe they need ingredients.
There you go.
I think ultimately we are going to see a period of that that kind of economic exchange for sure.
And let it be known that this Wikipedia page, there's an editor that wants to nominate this article about chromatistics for deletion. Okay.
Whoever's talking, you're not close to your microphone and I can't hear you.
Okay, so the Wikipedia page on chromatistics, there's an editor on Wikipedia that wants to delete the entire article, the entire discussion, the entire term, the entire mention on Wikipedia. So that should tell you something. Because I mean it's crucial.
Well,
you listen to any financial podcast, they're not going to talk about chromatistics as a philosophical principle for like the basis of building wealth from wealth. Even though that's really the entire paradigm that all financial podcasts talk about, but they never mention this term, which is to me always been very suspect. And it kind of is a little bit of a philosophical lens, a little portal into the underbelly, perhaps, of our current financial paradigm. That the foundational philosophical concept behind the current wealth paradigm wants to be deleted from Wikipedia. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And there's not many other.
In that same vein. I'm sorry. In that same vein, they called the constitutional silver junk, and then they called junk bonds high yield. It's just like one big mindfuck.
Yes.
It's a humiliation ritual almost.
You're right. Using outrageous euphemism as just sort of casual substitute for reality. Exactly. It's very
well, that's
widespread.
why everybody should be on the Big Dog Telegram show or channel and the Zetetic News so they can actually talk about real stuff.
Agreed. Smitty, what else did you said you took some notes. What else did you want to bring up?
Well, I was just going to tell a quick story on that one, that subject, and then move on to the other stuff. And that was a number of years ago, about 20 years ago, I went up to Montana to look at buying an apartment building. And I stopped by the bank on the way out, grabbed a little bit of cash, and then went home, got on the airplane the next day, and realized that when I got as far as my connecting flight in Denver and wanted to buy a cup of coffee, that I had left my card in the teller at the bank.
Oh.
So I was headed out. So I had no money, and I'm headed to Montana for 4 days with no money. Back in those days, and I can tell you, gold was trading at $600 an ounce at that point. I always used to carry an ounce of gold in my wallet. And it was a Friday afternoon, and I called my girlfriend, had her call the coin shop in Montana, and they actually in Missoula, and they actually stayed open an extra half hour for me to go in and change my gold coin into money so that I could survive the weekend.
There you go.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good reason to carry actual money. Money in its original sense of the word.
I had
That was
Smitty, I had a sort of opposite experience one time when I wanted to withdraw all my money out of my account. I had I'm a salesman by profession, and I had a year where I had good commissions, and I was very concerned. Like Big Dog said at the beginning of the show, like he wakes up every morning thinking, "Oh shit's gonna hit the fan." I've been living that Groundhog Day since I graduated college in 2008. Basically, I can't believe we haven't had a variety of things happen. Although we've had some perturbations that sounded like what I expected, but ultimately they've been able to paper over and kick the can further down the road. But anyways, back to my story. I wanted to pull my money, my cash, and literally cash in the mattress type shit, some of the money that was in my bank account. And at this point, even we're talking like 2013, there was no teller anymore. There was no teller at my bank. Basically, my bank is like a telecall center. There's one person who sits behind a desk, but when it comes to withdrawals, I'm talking to someone on Skype or Zoom or Teams. Like it's literally a computer terminal with, I'm video conferencing with somebody sitting in a call center somewhere, and the machine is essentially a glorified ATM. And I'm like, okay, I want to take out $50,000, and they start scrambling. And they're like, "Oh, we need you to fill out this form. We need to fill out this form to basically tell us, what do you do for a living?" And I'm like, "Why do you need to know that? Like, are you the police? Like, why are you asking me?" "Oh, Patriot Act."
Oh, 50,000! You broke the system.
Yeah, which
exactly.
is so. I'm thinking like 50,000. It's a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, I live in a metropolitan area with several 100,000 people, and there are literal billionaires who live around here. Millionaires, many millionaires, and at least a few billionaires. And I bank with a major federal credit union, and I'm like, you guys don't have $50,000 in this branch? Like, are you kidding me? That just told me how tenuous things were. And then they wanted me to make all these disclosures that fill out this government form, and I refused. And I was like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to not give me my money? And they're like, well, we're required to ask for this form. And I said, I understand you're required to ask for it. I'm not required to fill it out.
Right.
Like, I won't. I want my money.
Right.
Give me my money. And they eventually, they basically, there was like 4 ATMs, and they got a little bit more than 10,000 out of each ATM. But I'm pretty sure they had to restock like the next day. And that, to me, I'm like, holy shit, we are on a razor's edge on any given day. If like literally 2% of the population around here did the same thing as me, even if they only have a couple $1,000s in their account, they're done. That's a bank run.
Right.
They have no more currency, and people better hope that their credit and their EBT cards will transact digitally, because other than that, they have nothing.
I mean, there's going to be massive capital controls that they're going to roll out for sure as a way.
Well,
the last dying breath of the fiat system. Yield curve control and capital controls for sure. Because I mean, they
great reset.
Yeah, they can't let bond yields go to 20%. Like, I'm sorry, they're not gonna be able to do that. So yeah, the bond market is.
They did before.
Well, yeah, but that was with only less than $100 billion, $200 billion in debt or something. Like, I don't even think it was $1 trillion yet. So I mean, the way that the system.
I was a real estate agent.
Yeah.
I was a real estate agent at that time, and the deal I transacted ended up with a 19% mortgage.
Right, and the home price was probably like 2 years worth of salary of the average worker.
135K, yeah.
Right.
I mean, he eventually refied it down, but yeah.
But that's probably that same house at 7% now is probably $600,000, $700,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Easily.
So if you look at the math there, it's like, give me the 19% interest rate with the 135 any day of the week. But they want to snooker people and say, oh well, hey, interest rates are low. Just ignore the price. It's all about the payment. Can you pay the rest of your life at this rate?
Yeah.
You're good, man.
The mortgage, the death pledge.
Death pledge. That's the literal etymology of mortgage. But I mean, I guess there are things worth dying for, right?
Ready for the next topic?
Yeah. What you got?
Okay, well, let me preface it by saying, I think you all know who Dick Allgaier is, Future Forecasting Group.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar. He does like remote viewing, future events and prognostications around market developments and so on based on their practices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, the group did a viewing on Congress, and they saw the end of Congress, where they were all in that their accuracy rate is really quite high, and I'm just using this to begin the topic here, but they saw the congressmen all staring at their shoes and getting physically sick, and as that being the last day that Congress would meet. And we've had some events recently that, that again, that was a few years ago. And now, you may have heard in the news that Trump and the Justice Department and FBI and DOJ are investigating all of this malfeasance from USAID and the misappropriation of funds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my mind, I'm thinking that is setting the stage for that event, and I think if we're going to see that, we're going to see it in June.
That's pretty soon.
There's a military parade planned around the 14th of June. And I think what we're going to see, you've heard of the law of war, I'm sure. And I think we're going to see it, the military control can only be brought in when the government can no longer function, the three branches can no longer function to move forward. And demonstrating the corruption of the legislative branch that we all know exists and have witnessed. Seeing what the absolute disaster the Justice Department has become, the I'm looking to see essentially military tribunals where they can't. I mean, there's a number of people who really deserve to be behind bars, and they can't. If you tried to run it through the Justice Department and the legal system, it would take decades. However, if they did it through military tribunals, it's a matter of days, and it's a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is my own hypothesis, but I see all of that coming together as a cleansing of our government to move to what I see as the next phase of world affairs. That will essentially well, in the last 2 months, you've seen the power shift in the world, where China has no debt. I mean, the only debt that they have is to themselves, but they don't have debt to other nations. So they are sovereign. The Mideast, with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, etc., are all oil rich, and as I'm sure you're aware, Islam debt is not allowed in Islam. So they're sovereign as well, and they have combined to form what is called the Gulf Cooperation Council. And in the West, we've seen essentially a power shift from our government, which has become, I mean, you've seen under Joe Biden and even under Trump, they don't really have, the government itself doesn't have the authority, and the authority is actually with who owns the money, which is BlackRock. And I think those are going to be the three sovereign economic forces moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be your great reset going into the new digital economy.
Right.
So I'm at a transition. So to the good news. So if you've got comment now, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say I'd love to hear Xavier's and Big Dog's as well. I personally would love nothing more than for some sort of black swan where not just Congress, but nobody in government basically shows up to work the next day. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'll caveat that, like, there are certain functions which we have become dependent on where, that government, unfortunately or fortunately, run, which I would not want disruption to. But as far as Congress is concerned, like, we would be so much better off if they just didn't exist anymore. I'll be honest though, like the context, like the pretext, the conflagration, the confluence of events, which you mentioned may culminate in some sort of big event where they're, they end, so to speak. I like we talked about before when Big Dog said he wakes up every morning thinking about shit hitting the fan in the markets. Like, I have also been waiting for that event, and I feel a little bit like it's and I'm probably jaded, it's a bit 2 weeks-ish, if you know what I'm saying. Like, the whole saying of like, oh, 2 weeks we're gonna have mass arrests, military tribunals. I've heard that story so many times, and I get the idea, the justification, like, if our service members are subject to military penal code and not the Constitution, why should the Congress people not also be subject to these harsher, more more restricted? Look, you have a higher standard of you have a higher standard applied to you because you are serving the public function as an employee of the corporate government. So the Constitution, as it applies to a citizen, it doesn't apply to you. You have a higher standard, and if you're violating that, I think we should be stricter. Like, we should be enforcing treason laws.
Sure.
These people should be fucking strung up for what they've done. Like, I don't care if they go to Gitmo. I hope they do. But there's a slippery slope with that.
You're correct, and they have taken the oath, so they are subject to that.
Right. And they'll argue, the devil will argue, use scripture to defend his purposes all day, and likewise the congressmen, they typically will only cite the Constitution when it serves their purposes, but in point of fact, the Constitution should be used to fucking throw the sort of Damocles down on their head. So I'm all for that. I'm hopeful for it. I am jaded as well and skeptical that, in 2 weeks, June, actually it's like 1 week, 2 weeks since the parade that you mentioned, but we'll see. I mean, we are, I think, in very, I hesitate to say unprecedented, because I think there's a lot of precedent for what we're seeing right now, but things are definitely volatile and different than they felt even a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So as far as the machinations of the global powers, the China situation, I tend to think like our governments are way more intertwined than they would have us believe. I feel like this whole good guy, bad guy, Coke versus Pepsi, China versus US, it's like it's more of a charade to get people bought into the volleyballing that's happening, but everybody knows, any adult knows, that there's backroom dealings and agreements, and what gets put on the TV as is more consensus manufacture, public sentiment, like gaming, than it is real negotiation. That's my personal belief, but I'd love to hear Xavier and Big Dog's point of view on that.
Well, really, it's it's just so intertwined. These it's like the whole adage of there's going to be squabbles at the craps table amongst all the mafia dons as to who owes who, and how much the recent bet was really worth, and who needs to pay up, and there's going to be fights at the table for sure, but they're all going to unite to defend the game if the game is ever threatened. And so that to me, I think, is the big that's the big caveat here, is that they're actually much more aligned. They're much more interconnected and subject to mutual interests than I think that the media arms and the pundits and the talking heads would like us to believe. I mean, there's a
perhaps
sort of,
you're right, and
mutual codependence.
Perhaps they're just shedding baggage.
Right. And the reality is, you mentioned BlackRock as the only actual real sovereign, and really BlackRock is the most successful pirate corporation that's ever existed. I mean, they're essentially a wealth management firm, but when you look at the art of the pirate, many pirates operated highly successful mercantile international businesses, and what they did was they just oversaw the supply of all the transactions going here, there, and the other place, and they took what was easily understood by their trade secrets as negligible in the form of fees. And so the pirates, and then the buccaneers and the mercantilists, they eventually created a guild system where you had to participate in this kind of organized bilking of every single transaction that came through your ports and through your networks and your ship lines and everything. And I think it's interesting because it seems like we are heading more towards a mercantilist order and away from this kind of capitalist system. It's not really, capitalism is really just sort of a subcategory of monetarism, as is socialism and communism and all these isms. They're all monetarist systems. Continue.
Xavier, you're right on point. BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard have their people on the boards of every major corporation.
Correct.
They control it all.
Correct.
Interlocking.
So they are the pirates.
They are the pirates.
Bigger than East India.
Oh yeah, they took all kinds of pages out of Dutch East India Corporation. Absolutely. And I think that they are forming a new South Sea bubble, but about 100,000 times larger in nominal terms. And it's going to go for probably 5 or 6 times longer than the South Sea bubble did. And if you look at it as a chart, right, the bubble that BlackRock wants to create, I mean, the South Sea China, like, would hardly even show up as a blip in terms of percentage worldwide resource terms. I mean, I think they want a complete redenomination of all assets at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a complete reset. There's going to be a period of time. I agree with Bix Weir actually on this, that there will be a period of time of pure regression to a local regional pricing mechanism. These electronic exchanges, the derivatives market, equities market, it will shut down. There will be a period of blackout where nobody knows exactly what anything is worth,
right?
And it will really come down to the true adage of the market, which is it's only worth what someone will pay.
Correct.
And these fictitious etheric assets and instruments will not go away completely. They will eventually come back online, but only after a period of complete blackout.
Right.
And when they come back online, I think, unless that is precipitated for some kind of new system, which very well could be, where things are even more gamed than they are now. The only other trajectory will be a situation where honesty, transparency, and real true valuation takes precedent, and I would hope a revaluation of things would take place to where it represented something closer to reality.
But then you have the whole labor theory of value there, right? I mean, I think that what BlackRock wants is for everyone to become a trader, and they want to have full reign
in the Gulag casino,
in the Gulag casino economy that they want to enshrine as 80-90% of all human activity. And that benefits them immensely because they take a little slice out of every transaction, and even if it's only 0.1% of quadrillions of dollars, you're going to have BlackRock at tens of trillions of dollars, perhaps even hundreds of trillions of dollars in managed assets, quote unquote. And that would be the sort of mercantilist fantasy paradigm. And I actually think that that would be probably the one that would be most easily implemented versus something like a Chinese sort of top-down uniparty communist system. I don't see that really working in the West at all. It works in the East decently, but again, that's a cultural phenomenon mostly. And then same thing with Islam and the Persian Gulf sovereigns. That's another kind of top-down authoritarian system that doesn't necessarily behoove the sense of rights and privileges and freedoms that the West has in terms of accessibility of resources, travel, cross-border payments, all that stuff. It seems like BlackRock will necessarily have to cooperate with them in order to create some sort of middle ground company store effect where their sovereign wealth is sort of recompensed or rewarded for being placed within this new casino economy, post-labor crematistic technocracy that they're constructing, and it's well on its way. I mean, all of the data that we're hearing month in, month out, it's completely lagging, cooked, censored garbage, basically. I mean, the data that they've been releasing to justify monetary, fiscal, whatever policy, it has been completely non-efficacious and bankrupt, especially since 2022. But even before then, they had all these accounting tricks and all these ways to convince people that things have always been better than they actually have and are actually currently. 4.2% unemployment rate. I mean, you got to be. That's a joke. I mean, you'd be closer to reality if you put a 2 in front of that. But go ahead.
Big Dog gonna weigh in?
Big Dog, you still there? Go ahead, Smitty.
Did he fall asleep again?
It's possible.
Oh. So, well, I guess he's not here. So, Xavier, you took it right to where I was going with the next point, and that is that first of all, we know that the Fed has been, you all made the point that they've been really good at kicking the can down the road. We all thought it was coming to calamity time after time after time, and it hasn't happened.
Right.
And I foresee. Well, I think we're going to see a big. I could be wrong, but I think that this will also cause what happens in June will cause great uncertainty and calamity in the markets. Probably a significant dip, maybe even a shutdown for a short period of time. But there's some things coming in July that will totally transform everything. To begin with, on the 1st of July, gold becomes a Tier 1 asset in the United States. What that means is a massive increase in liquidity for the banks. Any bank holding gold on their balance sheet at this point can lend against it at about a 20% value. When it becomes a Tier 1 asset, they can lend against it at 80%. So it will triple the amount of funds they have versus the gold they have available to lend. So you'll see a massive increase. When that happens, you'll see a massive increase in liquidity in the economy.
Well, and that goes along with the whole revising of the SLR, right? The supplementary leverage ratio that these banks have been beholden to since the...
right, fractional reserve banking, correct.
Right, so the Besant, of course, is trying to change the SLR to where the banks basically don't have to abide by the same standards as they did post-2008. So it's almost like,
correct.
People have been saying for a long time that we're 2006, 2007 right now. But actually, if you look in terms of the regulatory maneuvers that allowed for that big bubble to form in housing after the dot-com crash. It was all the loosening of the banking requirements and the lending requirements. So I think realistically, we're actually more like in 2002, 2003, and then we've got another 5 years of the mega bubble. And I think by 2030, you're going to see a big confluence of all these different trends kind of reaching their apex and needing to basically finally encounter the cliff. And I think that's gonna be similar. It's gonna be kind of like an echo bust of 1929, and it's almost like they're setting up this kind of scripting right now of the buy now pay later, right? People financing burritos and
buying Tic Tacs on credit.
that kind of stuff. Those kind of products were brought into the market in their own kind of ways in the 1920s, in about the mid of the 1920s, where people could kind of the things were, you could get money a lot more easily, and so that's why the whole Fed's 4%.
DoorDash has buy now, pay later now.
Exactly.
You can get your food on credit. So,
yeah.
Well, go. You're absolutely right, and I'm not sure about the time frame beyond 25, 26, but in 25, the next 6-7 months, there's a series of events that are occurring that will reshape our entire economy.
Yeah.
The first one is July 1st with the gold becoming a Tier 1 asset. The BIS and the World Bank are looking to digitize, and BlackRock are looking to digitize all assets and the entire economy.
Tokenization of your farts.
Right.
Tokenization of everything, including the people. Correct. And I'm not joking.
Yeah, that's me neither. They want to tokenize your farts. I'm not even joking.
That's actually real.
Oh.
that's like
and so
Bill Gates
Microsoft patent.
Yeah.
Buy Fartcoin.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. There you go. I mean, come on.
Exactly. That's like the premier altcoin performer this time around is Fartcoin. Fuck.
You can't even make this.
You can't make it up. You can't make it up.
But anyway,
it's a tragedy.
It really is hilarious, though.
So on July 14th, FedNow becomes active, and they've had their last postponement supposedly, and that's when all banks to do business in the United States will have to go on the ISO digitized standard. The World Bank has the next deadline after that is the World Bank and the BIS have set up coincidentally November 22nd is the date that all banks of the world, if they're going to work in cross-border settlements, have to be ISO 20022 compliant, and which I think is really an interesting date, seeing how November 22nd is also the date that Kennedy was killed.
A gang sign, perhaps.
These people don't do anything by accident.
Right. No, that's true. I said a gang sign, perhaps, but you're right. I believe nothing is decided in government till everything is decided in government. I'm not sure who said that. I can't attribute the quote, but I heard it somewhere and it resonates.
I want to say that's like Aaron.
So
what's that Aaron? So I can't remember.
So this year, within the next 6 to 7 months, what you will see is the three power brokers of the world establishing cross-border payment system, digitized cross-border payment system, so that they can, and essentially pushing aside SWIFT and its clunkiness in favor of something that, is less expensive and frictionless.
Yeah, that'll be the sale. That'll be the pre-sale job. Yeah. And
right.
truth be told, I mean, those systems are antiquated. And,
no one
there's
likes using
middlemen and infrastructure that's costly and not what it could be with today's technology. So it'll be an easy sales pitch, I think. But
have you tried
you're
sending
right.
money overseas? Oh my God!
Yeah, you're right. These are.
I mean, there are some good things about it.
Yeah.
And
the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
The carrot.
Right.
Well, and exactly, and the first thing you're going to see is the carrot.
Yep.
Have you heard Trump say? I'm on Trump's mailing list, and I'm getting at least 2 either texts or emails a week saying, "Are you ready for? Would you like to get $5,000 from the government?" And they're going to be giving away money, and when they do, they will be giving it to you in a digitized format. He's already said that the government's not going to work with cash anymore, and so they'll get every hey, I'm going to hand Xavier, I'm going to hand you $5,000. You want it?
Hey, he already set the precedent for it during COVID.
He already set the precedent for it.
And now we can deliver that UBI
much
precursor much quicker now.
And you don't have to call on the phone to the Department of Health and Human Services or whatever.
You don't have to provide your social security number anymore. You can just send us a picture of your face.
Yeah, and we'll set up a little retinal portal for you.
Just get your digital ID.
Yeah, real ID, which is a whole other topic. I'm sorry, but
right.
Yeah,
but
real
you
ID.
Get the idea, and now they're going to buy you into it, and everybody's going to take it willingly, and that'll be the carrot.
Just like Social Security,
and when they do that,
TSA pre-check.
Yeah. I mean, there's all these little gifts, and it's sort of it's similar to the New Deal kind of idea, where they're kind of resetting things and trying to give a new benefit, a new kind of collateralized bargain to the masses in order to prevent them from basically, hitting the wall and going ape shit, like the Gerald Celente thing of, when people lose everything, they lose it.
It's basic abusive relationship tactics. Essentially, they want to starve you to the point where they could give you a shit sandwich and you will love to eat it.
Correct.
Essentially.
Correct.
Well, I think that's going to come later. I think right now we talked about kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And gold is going to create massive liquidity by giving the banks more to lend. The government's probably going to be passing out money to get the digitized system working, and it's going to flood the system with money, which means your stocks and your cryptos and your
keep this party going a little while longer.
Yep. I mean,
all
of that spells big.
You'll have a massive parabolic bull run.
Yeah. I mean, what that spells is a 5-year, 25+% compound gains in the S&P. I could see 9,500 on the S&P by 2030. Sure, it could double from here.
Yeah.
Same thing. NASDAQ could go to 50,000 on a crazy peak. Bitcoin could go to 500,000. All these altcoins, Ethereum could take off and go to 15, and that would send the entire ecospace that sprang off from it, into a dizzying bull run, you know, theta could get up into the 20s or 30s of dollars. You know, I mean, it could get crazy. But then that's going to be the big lure. That's going to be the big kind of the too good to be true sort of lure a little bit.
I'll just say some on the FOMO, Smitty, and then I really appreciate you joining. You've been a great guest. Believe it or not, we're in the last half hour of the show.
Time always flies.
Time flies. But as far as the FOMO goes, man, I just totally lost my thought. But we do need to take a break. A quick break. We have one last caller I want to get in, and we've spent so much time on economics, which has been awesome. There's still a couple other topics we wanted to kind of talk about on the show. And so we're going to take a quick bio break, Smitty, and if you want to stay on, you can, and interact with our next guest. Otherwise, bid you farewell, and appreciate you sharing your insights on the discussion. But let's play some music.
Gentlemen.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for calling.
I'll weigh in on theta as a bio-neural network next time.
Oh yeah, we'd love to do that and get Mitch's thoughts as well. No, we could go on and on about that. We'll see what happens with that.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Design? Find a 3D designer today.
Oh, I meant to say the first recognizes handle, but somebody can't believe there are more people than this. First comment. Check this out. Who's got it today?
I think it's rad.
All right, we're back in the saddle for our last. I don't know, we might go a little past our normal time because we were a little bit late, and we're having so much fun. We've got great call-ins. If you guys are just listening to the show, we have a video component on YouTube, ztidic.news. We are the first next generation news network powered by Theta. We are your host, myself, Dave, and
Xavier Diamond.
for episode 53, it's May 29th, 2025, and we're here in the last leg of the show. We've got our last caller. It's an 808 area code. Thank you for your patience. He's been waiting 25 minutes to join us. I'm going to drop him in the queue, but before we have him say hello and bring up what he wants to discuss, I wanted to make sure that we play a couple clips, part of our thematic topics for tonight, that we have yet to talk about. We talked so much about economics, crypto, AI, technologies, markets. It's time to pivot a little bit and get into these other subjects. Since our last show, we had a glorious rocket launch and venture into the great unknown known as space. And I'm talking about, of course, Katy Perry on the Blue Origin space dick rocket ship with Jeff Bezos' wife, and they went on a little theme park ride into the what do they call it, outer atmosphere, the ionosphere, zero G. They kind of go up and then they come down, and it was this big media circus, and we have celebrities, billionaires, seeing the great unknown and coming back and reporting to us. As we were talking about before, so much of what we see on TV can be faked, and since we have no firsthand knowledge or experience with what is being depicted, it stands to reason that we should at least question whether what we're seeing is reality at all. And I wanted to play a couple clips to kind of tee up this discussion. This is Joe Rogan talking about Katy Perry's venture into space, and it's pretty funny. And then I have another clip that Xavier shared to the channel on ZTidic News' Telegram, showing kind of a whole generation of a political pattern, if you will, of promising the moon. That's a phrase, right? Promising the moon. So let's play these clips, and then we'll introduce our next call-in, 808 area code. I think his name is John, first-time caller, and get his thoughts and anything he might want to bring up pertaining to this clip, these clips, or anything we talked about on the show already. So here we go.
Perry talk about going to space.
Now you are officially an astronaut.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel?
I feel super connected to love.
Goodness.
I will never be the same.
You said that you needed to go to space to heal. I know you're only a few minutes removed from this incredible experience. Do you feel healed? Is it what you expected?
No.
Better?
I don't think you can describe it. Because, you know what I was saying? It was like quiet, but then also really alive. And you look at it and you're like, we're all in this together.
It's so fun when people. Why is it so fun when people get pretentious? Because you're terrified that you would ever do it.
Well, yeah, and I also think it's fun to see somebody who has no self-awareness.
Yeah,
it's funny to hear the richest guy in the world's wife go, "We're all in it together." I don't know if people feel that.
Yeah, we're definitely not.
How in it together are we?
Yeah, what does that mean?
It feels like you hand-selected a couple of friends to go do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been a lottery system like Willy Wonka, where just 7 random people should have been able to go in this.
That would be good.
Just 7 random people. What were they up there? 10 minutes?
Well, it was very profound. I don't know if you've seen Katy Perry talk about it, but she's basically a guru now.
Yeah. What were her findings? That's my question.
Well,
what did
brought
she
a
learn?
Daisy, which is super important. It shows you how quick the flight was. The dead daisy that's like snipped from its life source was still vibrant.
Yeah, and it's look
at her.
Yeah.
Shout out Daisy.
Wow.
Look at her nails. So pretty.
Now, so they go up there and they float for like 10 minutes?
At least.
And then they come down.
Let's not minimize this.
No, I know. It's a big deal.
Let's celebrate female astronauts.
And because they were united.
Because a lot of men astronauts, they have to go to school.
Right.
They have to learn how to be a pilot first. Then they have to join the Air Force or the Navy, and then they get appointed by NASA.
That's right.
And then they go to space. You know?
And there has been, that's the other thing, there has been female astronauts.
Let's not minimize this. Let's not minimize this.
I think there was a bit stuck on a space station for a few months. That's terribly more impressive.
Let's not minimize this.
Did Musk rescue her?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Where's that in the news?
I didn't know
Those
that.
people were stuck. And by the way, Elon could have rescued them during the Biden administration. They didn't want to because of his open support for Trump.
Right. Yeah.
So they left those people up there. Yes. He's talked about it on my podcast. They left those people up there.
And they're just chilling.
No, they're dying.
But these ladies seem fine.
Well, for now. Let's not minimize. Let's not minimize the sacrifice they've made for a great nation. For the world, in fact, but anyway. Let's hear Katy Perry talk about.
Right.
So that's funny in its own right. Here's the other clip I wanted to play. Xavier sent to me.
America is going to space again, and we're going there to stay.
A permanent lunar base, and we're going back to the moon, back to the future, and this time, back to stay.
Turn to the moon by 2020 as the launching point for missions beyond.
And by 2025, we expect new spacecraft designed for long journeys to allow us to begin the first ever crewed missions beyond the moon into deep space, into the solar system. Not just to visit, but to stay.
It marks an important step in returning American astronauts to the moon.
We will return American astronauts to the moon
within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the moon. We're going to have a base on the moon. We're going to send people to Mars and make life multiplanetary.
The United States will return astronauts to the lunar surface. We will establish the first lunar base camp and the first station in lunar orbit. We intend to land an international astronaut on the surface of the moon by the end of the decade.
Oh man, that is funny.
Great compilation.
The music is absolutely apropos.
Yep.
And you could tell Obama knew it was bullshit. Like, I'm not just singling him out.
Not
like
just to visit, but to stay.
But maybe some of them actually did believe that, like, that they were endeavoring to do that for real. Wow. So that's hilarious. So that kind of tees us up. This is just like an ongoing thing. Between every episode, whether we've broadcast, within 4 weeks or 8 weeks, or it could be 6 months, like, it's so predictable. There will be like a rocket launch, or there will be some pronouncement from NASA that either like an asteroid is gonna crash into us in 2020 whatever and kill us all, or we just took this new picture of this faraway galaxy, or we launched and made this observation. Oh, maybe the rocket exploded midair. Update on our progress, or there was some new funding granted to do XYZ on Mars, and there's always some kind of bullshit like that. But like, when has it ever really resulted in any kind of major discovery, innovation, or achievement?
And it's like, how many dozens of billions of dollars are just sloshed around in this giant Manhattan Project, basically? I mean, it's got to be the trillions of dollars by now since the inception of
I was
NASA.
born in 86. You've got a clip here starting with 88, and I know it goes even before that, right? Obviously, with the Apollo missions and whatnot.
I mean, inflation adjusted.
When you put it like that, it's kind of like that video of all the local newscasters saying the same thing.
Precisely.
It's like, this is just a script that they have to read.
Correct.
And the agenda never changes. We never actually accomplish anything that we're going to accomplish. It's always that carrot on a stick, like, give us more money, give us more psychological support for this. It's really the only government agency that actually engenders sense of pride, or I mean, outside of the military, which is again like an incentive-based model.
Right.
You're paid to be proud of the military, and you're beaten over the head from birth, basically, to worship the military and what they provide. But like, space is the other example. I can't think of another example except for the liberal side and maybe the public health agency.
Exactly.
Where they cheer it on, and they'll wear T-shirts, NASA T-shirts, and it's. I feel like NASA's in its own category where it's transcended being a government agency, and it's more of a pop culture icon.
It's more openly Bernaysian.
Yeah.
It's more openly Bernaysian.
But it's every bit as fraught with fraud as any other agency, and malfeasance and deception. And I'm just so tired of it. I want to welcome our last caller of the night. It's area code 808. First time caller on Zitidic Newscast. You're welcome to episode 53 in this crazy month of May in 2025. Thank you for calling into the show and being patient with us as we brought you into the fold. What's your name, and where are you calling from, and what would you like to discuss or comment on with what we've said so far?
Hey, Dave, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to talk about a couple things. My name is John.
Hey, John.
I actually live in Texas. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Houston, we got a problem.
There's just a couple things that you talked about that really caught my interest, and just made me to call in. My family, first off, first generation American, and I have some family from Germany. As you might think, there's a particular party that happened there back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And so they migrated after the war into the United States. Some of them were scientists and actually worked on the Apollo project. And I could say without a doubt that, at least from my family accounts, there's a lot of things that have not been shared with the general public. Everything from whether or not we can fly up there, all the way to, are we alone in space? And the answer is no, we're not. At least from what my family's told me, and I have my theories as to what that entails. But yeah, I'll just stick with that there, and I'll kind of go into more detail. I guess I could say, my great-grandfather was part of the Apollo project for when they reached to the moon, or when they said that they reached to the moon. He did say that there were people living on the other side of the moon, and that it was a habitable place. It wasn't actually out of any sphere where there wasn't air, and that a number of the films that were sent over to the general public were theatrical. They weren't real. Not to mention a number of people that did try to go up there actually died. So I could just kind of leave that as far as some information is concerned. But I actually really like part of the conversations that you were having as far as monetary and as far as crypto is concerned, and gold.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that people really don't notice what's going on now that has to do with crypto is all of this is pressuring the general public to not have children. So if you look at how the generations that are having just less and less resources, less and less assets in order to have children, you also have to look at the... Sorry, I'm hearing some feedback.
It's me typing. Sorry.
So the monetization of everything, including trees, right, the air, and of course a person. But what people don't realize is that when we had COVID, that the jab, I guess you could say, was a way of creating kind of a monitoring system within each individual who took it. And for whatever reason, people are not attaching, well, what do you think is going to happen to crypto? It will become a monetization of actual people, but not only monetization of just being tracked via number, but also being tracked via genetic code and via genetic information via using the jab as a whole, because it is actually a software download. It is not, or a software that's turned into a hardware download. I don't know if you've done any research, but if you look at the people that have been vaccinated and they had myocarditis, you'll see these long strains of plastic, long strains of synthetics that are built into their vascular system as well as towards their tissues. And it's basically the code, or the it's also a form of genetics too. It's a high evolution of technology that is trying to wire the body to be monetized in the sense of being monitored. And so the reason why I bring that up in the same topic is because all this coalesces to a form of control. Not only the view of like how you see space and how limited you are in where you can explore, but also the way that things are measured and how many children you have. Because if you have more kids, it's harder for the system to monitor that. You have more things you have to monitor. You have to have more people jabbed. You have to have more. You tend to have more complications. But what are your thoughts as far as technology and genetics, and how do you see them in the future? Like, do you think that is part of the, I guess you could say, cabal's plan?
Well, we've covered in previous episodes this sort of transhumanist trend towards outmoding the heterosexual progenitorship of new life. So there was an article that came out, I think it was early 2021 in the New York Times, that talked about how in the future anyone and their uncle and their cousin can create a incubator baby, basically, and that we will completely outmode the need for natural procreation through essentially genetic splicing and stem cell incubation techniques that are becoming more and more sophisticated, and it'll allow for a much more easy commoditization of the human form as a resource specimen, as opposed to a unique life form with a consciousness and a soul and a destiny. It's going to be seen much more like sort of a kind of pet, and you see that.
Well, not only, yeah, I was just going to say, not only that, the traits of rebellion would probably be taken away too.
Correct.
Because a lot of our traits that that we are predisposed are genetic. But one thing that I've noticed is it's to some degree all this planning has actually backfired from the cabal. They've kind of played their hand to such a degree where those that are taking the jab, they are getting genetic. They are basically having what's called cancer, and a number of other ailments. They're dying off, and they're not having offspring. And the people that are having offspring are usually those that are conservative and religious. So the future might be unintentionally more religious. Now, that's not to say. So how do you control a mass of people if they are not willing to listen to you? And that is where I believe the mark is going to come, where the cryptocurrency is going to be fused into what we call, the biblical version of the mark of the beast. It will be cryptocurrency within the mark of the beast, utilizing vaccinations. The reason why I kind of bring this up with space travel is because this is an entirely genetic warfare. I just heard you guys earlier, you were talking about how, there's going to be everything that's going to be monetized and numbered, and they're going to be measuring even your farts, right? We kind of already live there. We live there already right now, just not to the nth degree, right? It's like, well, what is their accomplishment? Their accomplishment is that they want control and to have a monarchy. But if you look at all the political agents that are out in the field right now, they all are somewhat related. And so whether that be through indirect or direct lines, the Clintons have been in office so many times, the Bushes have been in office so many times. We live in an indirect monarchy to some degree. And so this phase of them moving to a very direct monarchy, which is what it will turn into, you will have basically a genetically modified slave race, and you will have an elite race. Yeah. And that's as unfortunate as that sounds. That's what it looks like it's pointing towards.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is more like a de facto monarchy, which is consensus driven, not declared. Mm-hmm. It won't be a part of an official political process. It'll be a de facto feature of existence. What we have today, I would argue, is a covert monarchy. We have a monarchy that has marketed itself as not a monarchy.
As democracy.
As democracy.
A republic, yeah.
And so like the Bushes, you mentioned the Bushes and the Clintons, they are the front men. The front men of the front men of the monarchy.
Right.
That we actually live and toil under. And who is actually heading that up?
The true enemy. Yeah.
Who is that? Nobody will ever see it on TV.
Right.
It will never be a public figure that you hear about. And we are...
That's because Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, we are incrementally heading in the direction and on the trajectory towards.
The question is, who do these elites worship?
That's a very esoteric subject. It's a very esoteric subject and high. There's a lot of debate around that. We've had debates on our show.
Satan,
and it's just you get Satan, aliens, demons, energy. Yeah. I've heard everything under the sun. For me personally, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts as well. You get to a point of semantics. Mm-hmm. Because we've had folks on the show who are adamant these are not aliens, they're demons, they're extra dimensional, they're demons, they're not aliens.
They absolutely are.
But on the same token, like, what is an alien exactly? A demon who is not of the flesh, of not physical flesh and blood like you and I would interact. To me, that's alien. It's both. It's both. That you call it either or. Potato.
Well, so that's another thing too. All these monolithic structures that we have on Earth, they were built by flesh and blood aliens. And when I say aliens, I mean that they are the offspring of a human interdimensional being demon, right? Fusion. So when we see them in the sky, they are not a demon per se. They are the offspring of both a demon and a human, right? So the ones that are truly spiritual are the interdimensional ones. In saying that, their vehicles are interdimensional. They can go through multiple dimensions. And by the way, I have seen them. I have seen them with my naked eye. In California, and I've seen a couple in Florida, and I've seen a couple in Texas. And never, ever have I seen them when they fly away. They never fly into space. Never. And I've seen, I think 5. I've seen 5. They've never flown into space.
You mean up and...
up towards the sky.
I hear you.
They fly actually in a diagonal.
That's a good point. A very interesting observation, because you've talked about that as well. We've had guests on before talking about the nature of our realm and whether we're flat or a disc or some sphere. And Xavier has mentioned before, if we were spherical, would we not experience certain asteroids and meteors? How's the phraseology? But it's always horizontally traversing the sky. It's never coming towards or away from.
Yeah,
as you would expect in a spherical.
You would expect asteroids and comets and stuff to have many that come up from the horizon and terminate at the apex of your view towards like Polaris or something. But you never see that. There's literally no photo, video, or eyewitness
going like
evidence
horizontally, like Pong or something.
It's going much more at oblong or acute or obtuse angles in various directions, but it's never going vertically, ever. So that to me says that we're not in this orbs in the void cosmology. This is a telestration. It's a fabrication of the mind. It's not an actual reality.
Right, but the reason why I bring up genetics, and then I also bring up the people, the potential of the elites, who are they worshiping, is one, to identify the enemy, and two, it's also to realize that this is a very slow genetic warfare. All of this is slow genetic warfare. Mm-hmm. I don't know for sure whether it's the elites that prefer to have their genetics spread, or if it's this particular mid-ground group that operate these vehicles. Because in the past, when they have walked among us freely, many of the human race has killed them off. Completely killed them off. You have the story of David. You have multiple Indian
Talking about the giants.
Legends of them. Yes, correct. They've all been killed off. So there is a potential that they're fully aware of this and they want to make this our territory, but they can't do it in a very direct way.
Or
just because of our sheer number, or it could be our spirit. I don't know.
Interesting call.
Very interesting.
But the practicality of everyday people is have children. You should have children. Don't listen to the pop culture. Have children. Please.
Yeah, agreed. Both Dave and I have got five between us. So we're doing the ultimate existential work.
My wife sent me a meme today, and it said, in 50 years, nursing center workers will have to remind trans Alzheimer's patients why they don't have a dick 700 times a day. What happened to my dick?
Oh my gosh.
You cut it off when you were 23 years old.
Brutal.
What happened to my dick?
Brutal.
You cut it off when you were 23 years old. Poor Alzheimer's.
Well, I mean, I would imagine that the onset's probably earlier because of all the estrogen in certain specimens and the cross-hormonal disruption.
And the vaccinations and the aluminum formaldehyde concoctions delivered by their pharmaceutical.
It could very well. I've been reading some studies about population collapse, and for every 100 people that there are in the next 2 generations, those will equate to 4 grandchildren. So if you do the numbers that way, they might, in 2 generations, we will have a very empty planet. Our planet will be very empty in comparison to what it is today. And so, it's not just in the U.S., it's not just in, the Western Hemisphere. It's actually also happening in the Southern Hemisphere and Asia. Pretty much the only place that doesn't have a non-replacement population is Africa. But they are still also having less kids as well. It's just at a slower rate. But more.
Go ahead.
I was going to say more back to as far as the application of what I'm saying to you guys is that, at least from my observations, is that it is very important to identify that a lot of these discussions are happening on a spiritual level. They're also happening on a monetary level. But at the end of the day, it all leads to one thing, and that is death, right? When you see a lot of people that incorporate this monotheistic culture of not having children, for example, or not thinking about the future financially, it is all contributing to a dead end for that individual. So it's very important on a practical sense, when you're working with people, you're positive, you're encouraging them as far as having kids, about life, about saving, about, of course, gold and silver and cryptocurrencies. I'm all XRP gang here. But you also have to be aware that we will be looking at a future that will be very different from today. But what is your take on how the genetics is going to be playing, or I should say that the technology is going to be fusing with genetics? Is that a thought that you think that it could be a form of control? Do you see a practical way of us possibly getting out of it?
I would say that it's going to be baked into the current wealth disparity schema that they've been writing for 5 generations now. I think if you look at the films Zoe, which came out in 2018, highly recommend. It's top transhumanist propaganda. Kind of flew under the radar, but it's also dovetailed in with this other, technically unrelated, although the same actress is in both movies, and it just came out last year, called The Beast. And so when you combine those 2 movies, you're gonna see what they're planning, and that is voluntary submission through the subconscious neurotransmitter frame of reference for the human mind. And I think they're going to be introducing this as enhancement, as health, and it's only going to be people who have a large discretionary amounts of money who will be flaunting it. And then you're going to have the Veblen effect, which is pecuniary emulation. People are going to want to, buy now, pay later. Their, AI past life regression therapy, or they're going to come up with extremely convincing and highfalutin ways of presenting maybe sort of lucid dream type experiences to people, probably within the next 15 to 20 years, and it will be a voluntary thing. Yeah. People will voluntarily engage in it, and it will be worshipped. It will be a new religion.
Yeah, and let me respond to that as well, John. I have up on screen, if you guys are watching or just listening, check out the YouTube video component of this. This is a lecture given 7 years ago, May 29th. Holy shit. May 29th.
7 years to the day.
2018, 7 years to the day. At least it was published then by Ralph Baric, who is the preeminent coronavirus researcher in the world. He is local to Zetidic News Network. He works at University of North Carolina, where their biomedical research lab did key dealings with the military, the CIA, and the Wuhan virology lab. And this lecture, interestingly, 7 years ago, okay, so a full 2 years before coronavirus really set its fangs into the nation and world, called Imagining the Next Flu Pandemic and Preventing It, John. Okay, so if you look into this guy, Ralph Baric, he was developing gain of function research on the coronavirus to prevent it. Well, how did that go? Okay, this is 2018. How did it go, Ralph? How did it go? Well, he's implicated. Okay, he's implicated in this, and if you look at recent news around him, the heat is getting turned up, has been getting turned up, and we all know this COVID was a cover for the real bioweapon, which was mRNA technology, and people's consent to participate in a mass experiment to alter their genome.
Yeah.
As you talked about, John, this is a precursor. Who knows? I fully don't know, but I fully know that some fuckery is going on with the injections. You mentioned the blood clots and the plastics.
These
that have been,
Lovecraftian, foreign-looking
nanobots.
substances.
We've talked about this. We've posted on it. The nanobot technology, as well as the mRNA and the potential link to 5G, manipulating and or tracking those who have taken the mark, so to speak. Well, he talks all in this lecture about the research they do to basically modify coronaviruses to be more infectious, to be this, to be that, so that we can predict and prevent if it should happen that way in nature. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a clear cover for an operation that is definitely geared to genetically engineer the population, either through overt means, i.e. an injection, or covert means, i.e. social engineering and conditioning, to accept and endure this kind of modification and tracking and compliance and new normal, which we've covered, and probably the subject which has us most under the microscope and scrutiny.
And the main reason why we're so suppressed,
we're
and
so
shadow
suppressed,
banned.
and we have nobody listening to us except for the select few who are able to break through.
Because they don't send out alerts.
And I'll say this personal anecdote: I know this person. I know his family, his daughters. And, I know, for example, one of his daughters is a genetic counselor. Okay, so that's a whole nother subject, John, that is clearly intertwined with this whole idea that, and it's supportive of the whole abortion industry.
The body moddy.
Oh, hey, well, if I can tell through a blood test that my kid's going to be, of sufficient retardation, I'll just kill him, There's that whole thing of natural selection because science says it's the best thing for our gene pool, which is a eugenics idea,
right?
That has become mainlined, without unwittingly mainlined. There are a lot of people who buy into these ideas because on its face, like, yeah, we want a good gene pool, right? Like, we want our kids to be smart. We want them to be beautiful. We want them to exhibit certain traits. But is it the job of the laboratory or is it the job of nature? That is like kind of the quintessential question of this whole thing. Beyond the whole Orwellian Matrix type pod baby, designer baby, like we're actually in a proto stage,
right,
for that.
Yeah, the pump is already being primed.
Well, exactly.
Even if you do have the genetic, you have the ability to alter genetics to the point where you can have super tall, super intelligent, handsome, beautiful children
that are maybe immortal.
Are you willing? Are maybe immortal? Are you willing to put that in the hands of someone who you have no ability to scrutinize what they're doing? Right? Because you're essentially giving power to, you're trusting your legacy to an entire an institution, more or less, that as of 5 years ago, were throwing people in a hospital just to get additional funding when it came to COVID cases. So it's like the possibility of there even being genetic engineering, at least for someone that has the foresight of, well, let's say human nature, of what people can do if they're corrupted, there's not a reason to do it. The risks are too high. Now, in saying that, it's going to happen. Like, don't be foolish. Someone is going to be dumb enough to do it. And the question is, if you have children, how are you going to combat that? Well, right? That's what we should be asking ourselves: is how are you going to combat that?
Well,
if that is the case, yeah.
You mentioned encouraging people to have kids. I think the fundamental truth of the matter is family is the smallest form of government, and
absolutely.
If you govern appropriately, you can build your own army of people who will be diametrically opposed to these other competing forms of government, which is statism, to put it simply. And that is the answer. I agree. I've realized that and chosen that myself as a trajectory. Whether I'll be successful, we'll find out. Kids can be rebellious.
Yes, don't say that, brother. You will. Yeah. There's a reason why the cabal tells you what they're going to do. Right? It says in the good book. Your mouth will say, and it will happen. Why do you think the cabal isn't doing the same thing? Your kids are gonna be successful.
Maybe they're infertile from all the inbreeding.
Yeah, that's possible.
I mean, King Charles's eyes are dangerously close to one another.
Right. It's true. It's true.
Well, Well, that's what I mean as far as this is a genetic battle, and they do look for negative RNA genetics, which is correlated to many of the founding civilizations that have occurred throughout Earth, entirely. And there is a lot of misconceptions that people think this is all about, political power and money and funding, but in the end of the day, where the cabal really focus on...
No, that's a means of control.
I'm listening.
I would just have to interject.
Right.
I mean, it's a means of... You're right. It's a means of control. It's not the end goal. Why would it be the end goal? They already print it at whim.
Exactly. They can print out. Yep. Yeah.
Well, and then you ask the deeper question: why is control so important? Why do they worship power to the extent that they do? And if you're going to have a psychological examination into that, it's probably because they're overcompensating for something. Maybe various traumas, various toxic egregore feedback loops that they're caught up in. They have misery loves company, right? They want everyone to worship power and control in some way, shape, and form, even at the micro level of people's lives. And so that's why the culture is the way it is. That's why the society's been engineered the way it has. That's why people are the way they are, is because misery loves company, and corruption, fraud, abuse, trauma, suffering, it's all a trickle-down effect ultimately. And it's not even necessarily native to everyone's day-to-day existence. It's promulgated and pushed in people's lives, and it's by design, because that's where a lot of profit, leading to control, leading to psychopathic catharsis. That's really ultimately at the end of the day what it's all about. It's the whole some people just like to watch the world burn sort of ethos. It's really an anti-ethos, and then that's part of the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think our enemy's a lot smarter than that. I don't think it's chaotic. I don't think it's like, let me watch the world burn.
Well, but
I think that they
when they're the one lighting the fire, they're the ones controlling the burn. They like to watch the world burn as long as they're the ones controlling the burn. That was my deeper point there, is that the control is there because they like to see chaos happen that doesn't affect them, because they can then come in and play savior over the chaos that they fomented. I don't think that it's so finely tuned down to every single last person's impulse. I think that they allow for volatility that has the appearance of being entirely unmanaged take hold in certain periods and certain times, and then they opportunize the fallout and the reaction and the shock and the awe. And that's part of the formula that they've used to perpetuate their prominence for all these centuries. It is an ordo ab chaos. It's a chaos that they promulgate and stew for a long time, only to essentially transmogrify it into yet another form, yet another golem that they can then control in its new form in an ongoing new paradigm. And they constantly shift the paradigms, and it's usually, you can think of it in terms of cycles. Usually about every 4 generations they perform some kind of reset cycle, and that gets into the whole fourth turning and fourth industrial revolution type stuff. Is they want these resets basically to precipitate and aggregate so much pressure over time against the human organism that the human organism folds into their elemental control grid. And that's the kind of ultimate catharsis that they want to see. And again, that's that misery loves company kind of anti-ethos that they've engendered in everyone. Everyone is self-destructive in some way. Everyone has self-destructive tendencies, and that's what they feed off of. That's what they love to see engendered and celebrated and normalized, is these vulnerabilities within human nature that they themselves know they have, but they want to see it rampant. They want to see it
magnified.
Yeah. And that's why AI is so... It's an exoteric moniker. You know, we've delved into this in a couple other episodes, but AI also stands for the Ahrimanic incarnation, right? So AI is this exoteric sort of carrot and stick routine that's really hiding a much deeper, long-standing occult agenda, which is to foster conditions in which a sort of Ahrimanic consciousness or a deep misanthropic consciousness can take hold and become the new world religion.
Yeah,
and it's already being set up that way.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And this actually kind of builds into another theory that I've had as well, is that not only is the jab kind of working with others' genetics and modifying them, with the potential of cryptocurrency being labeled to some sort of chip that will be attached to you. But if you're thinking in a spiritual level as well, and you are these other deities, you could say demons, interdimensional beings that are more or less trying to get into our dimension, right? They're either doing it with interbreeding with us in the past, or they've just simply appeared and kind of vanished. I don't know, I'm not sure. But if you have a chip and you have genetic biotechnology that's attached to you, and there's a way that you can transfer your consciousness into a machine, then why not a deity or interdimensional species do that for each person that has a chip? And that, in other words, it's a possession of a person when people are possessed. But this time, instead of going to a priest where they can remove it, it is impossible to remove because it's hardware attached to your body.
Correct.
So there's a possibility of that happening.
Yeah, we're not that far away from that.
Yeah.
Again, I think that though I agree with, because they have such a dark sort of spiritual gnosis about the consequences of this paradigm that they're trying to bring in. They need to absolve themselves in some sort of way by indicating to us how it is that we will eventually voluntarily submit. And that's the whole, predictive programming and persuasion and all of this. But it's there to essentially stultify or paralyze or anesthetize or desensitize you to the very thing that they want you to succumb to. And that's a form of occult psychological manipulation, essentially. Is if you can normalize something over time that would have never been adopted if it was fully revealed as to what the real intention was all along, then you would have a sort of tacit or a sort of engineered assent. And so they're using technology as a way to grease the skids, or sort of a vector to sort of accelerate this sense of learned helplessness without it. And so that as long as humans can freely submit to these vulnerabilities that technology is trying to convince them that they can overcome, then ultimately they have a sort of permission to perform these atrocities. And that's that's the black magic or the left-hand path agenda that they've been constructing for a long time and in a relatively uninterrupted way. And the reality is, if the trend goes truly parabolic, the Matrix is going to seem trite and rather jejune compared to the kind of control grid that they really want, which is a soul harvesting program. They don't care about the BTUs or in the body to mine it for energy in some decrepit physical world where machines reign supreme. No. They want to have much more full spectrum, subtle dimensional dominance.
It's not monetary for them.
It's not monetary.
It's not monetary. It's not energy.
Even.
If they have sequestered technology for free energy, and they can print as much money as they want, and they already have control, what more do they possibly want? There's something spiritual that they need from us.
Correct.
Otherwise, what are they doing?
Salvation. They want salvation.
They definitely want immortality.
They want immortality.
No. Right, because we're able to achieve it through our Father Jesus. We can reach salvation. They cannot. I know it all sounds very like ancient. Okay, now we're going religious, but the reality is that's what it is. It's all just been covered up with, oh, this is super high tech, and it's not really high tech. There is. I'm not saying that there isn't technology involved. Absolutely, there is. There always has been. By the way, even these monolithic structures are absolutely ancient technology that have been created by these entities, as well as the cabal, whoever was there at that time, whether they were half-breeds or full-breeds or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely what they're looking for. They're looking for salvation. We have consciousness. We have an ability to talk to our Creator. They do not. That's why they want to genetically engineer us and somehow get into our bodies. They want to get into our genetics. Genetics is the key.
There's some.
Well, that's what they believe, but it's 100%.
I'll tell you where I agree is this is some kind of harvesting operation, as the video is depicting.
Yeah.
I do think genetics, like the human genome, the flesh industry, the energetic manipulation that's happening, there's definitely something that we have that they don't, that they want.
Correct.
Whether it's salvation or some kind of attribute,
the pneuma,
that we have that they don't. I've heard it in a number of different contexts. I also see it, in its manifestation. We are the product on the farm, essentially.
Correct.
And, I've heard of these demonic entities who prey on negative energy, and that's why we always seem to find ourselves in war and conflict, and there's these divide and conquer tactics which have us focused on our differences so that we have turmoil. And it has to be beyond the monetary. Like, we didn't just kill 1 million people in Iraq for oil.
No.
If we wanted oil that bad, we have it already in our country. In our borders. We don't have to go anywhere for it.
It's not over oil.
So it's not about that. There's something more here. Then you see the destruction of ancient relics and things like that, and historical cover-ups, John, which we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
You talk about monolithic structures.
Even relatively recent stuff.
And very recent stuff.
Supposedly recent stuff.
That are papered over.
Yeah.
Papered over.
Bricked over.
Bricked over. Mudded over. Papered over.
Yeah.
Really, it is so true to say there's so much more that we don't know.
Yeah.
Than we do know, but it's even more true to say there's even more that we don't know, which is known by a minority that we could know but we can't. Then we know. Like if we look at a prism, like, and the rainbow, like, what we're allowed to know is basically red. Every other color in the rainbow, we're not allowed to know.
Yeah, it's not
It's
seen.
sequestered in burned, incinerated history, or potentially the Vatican underground library, which is that's another development that we didn't even get to, is the machinations of the Pope, and various other facilities like Fort Knox that are of public discussion, holding vast troves of treasure and information which we're not privy to at all. So and that includes our genome. Like, what history does our genome actually say? Well, we have to kind of relegate any kind of deciphering of that to the scientific charlatans who pose as the ultimate authorities over all that stuff.
Grand
like
explainers.
23andMe also went bankrupt, and that's a whole nother. You talk about genetic harvesting and things like that, John. That's a big public discussion, even in the markets, right? Because 23andMe went bankrupt, and they collected all this genetic data, and now it's kind of up for the highest bidder, and people who provided it, they didn't necessarily agree. That's a very low level, mundane almost example of this kind of parasitic predatory. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just going to say, just at the time of birth, right? What do they do when your child is
Take
born?
your blood. Take
They
your
go
blood.
ahead and they take your blood.
Yeah.
And by the way, whoever's listening, you can absolutely 100% deny them. I have done it for at least one child.
Bless
that
you.
I have.
Bless you.
You can do it. Yeah. Yes. You should do it. Absolutely do it.
I'm guilty that I didn't.
Them 100%. It doesn't matter. I did it for my first one. Luckily, I only gave one sample that I was able to see. Also, everything from foreskin and placenta, do not allow them to take.
I'm with you there.
Have a circumcision. Yeah, because they do use it for medical purposes that they benefit from. So don't do it at all. It's all fake. It's all a horrible industry, whether it's genetic research or creating these so-called germination of viruses. Where do you think they test the genetics? They have to get the genetic material from somewhere, and they have to test it on certain races, right? It does come from somewhere. So, yeah, it's just to anyone who's listening out there.
No, I'm with
you. Can't deny it.
I'm with you. No, none of my kids have social security numbers at this point. That's a big TBD because apparently you have to comply with daddy government to travel anywhere on this world, and that'll come up at some point in the future. If it were 100% up to me, I would have not allowed them to draw blood. I totally agree. People should refuse it.
They'll pressure you. They will pressure
I was
you.
weak. I'll just say I was weak to the whims of my wife, and they employ a lot of intimidation tactics, and scare tactics.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, this is for health and blah 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 blah, and we're not going to let you leave the hospital. People threaten you with inconvenience, things of that nature too. But I mean, let's not be real. The hospitals have been militarized.
Yeah.
They are straight up
Absolutely.
militarized. They'll threaten to take your baby.
Yeah.
I mean, they will
No,
take your baby. Don't be mistaken. That's what's at stake. You know, when you try to, you know, I'm happy to hear you resisted it and were able to get out of there unscathed. But I've seen videos. We played them previously where people are not. They've had police officers show up to their door if they have so much as a home birth,
Right.
which is absurd. Like, this is a natural body process.
Yeah.
Like, it's as natural as taking a shit, and you're knocking on my door because what, you care more about the safety of my child? Whose child is it? You're not responsible, government. Like, I am.
Yeah.
You know, but that happens on the daily.
Well,
I mean, home birth is illegal.
Yeah.
Home birth is illegal.
In most places.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, and this is all part and parcel, again, to this incremental enculturation of worshiping the state, right? And then, you know, that has ripple effects going back to markets. Like, you know, oh, well, we'll just ever continually extract more and more property taxes by saying the same square footage you've lived in all these years is worth this much more and this much more every single year, so we can inflate this municipal bond debt and, you know, keep kicking the can down the road. And it's all part of the same slave mentality. And it's just heinous how pernicious and long-standing and, like, deliberate it is. But the fact is, because it's been so slow-moving for so long,
They played a long game.
they played a long game. And so now things are starting to accelerate, and people just shrug their shoulders and throw up their hands, and they're just like, I don't even fucking know what to think anymore. Because, and that's exactly by design.
That's what they
that's
want.
exactly what they want. It's like, yeah, just continue to shrug, continue to watch the sport games, continue to not care.
Well, it's to the point where people are going insane and cutting off body parts of themselves.
Yeah, well, that's all.
That's really what's going on.
That's very much encouraged in this paradigm.
Body mod.
Body moddy.
Exactly. Yeah.
They love it.
And that will only increase. It will only increase. In fact, I think in the future, it won't just be.
It'll be normalized. It'll be normalized. It'll be like going to the dentist.
I think people will start cutting off their noses, their arms, doing things like that just don't make any sense at all.
Well, and it's going to be for,
unfortunately,
you know, economic incentives. You know, I can now get this extra UBI if I'm, you know, trans.
Yeah.
You know, let me just go ahead and get the operation so I can get those extra, you know, 3,000 digishekels.
John, if you're not watching YouTube, we played this clip so many times. I'm not going to play it, but I have the video in the background for anybody watching on YouTube. This is going to be a great clip. It evidences exactly what you're talking about. This is a lady, Crystal. She actually is just down the road from us here in North Carolina. She's in Raleigh. And she had body dysmorphia and really needed to be blind, you know? Like you do. Just not satisfied, not, you know, getting the full zest of life. I need to be blind. And she found a psychiatrist who poured Drano into her eyeballs and blinded her.
Oh my gosh.
And she's on disability now.
For the rest of her life.
For the rest of her life. She's blind to look at her reading Braille. Oh, how brave. You know?
And that psychiatrist still has a thriving practice, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. She's
Actually,
got the right last name and
probably
everything.
was in the latest Pride Parade, you know?
Right.
And,
that's the kind of world we're in, man.
This is yeah. Now this is years and years ago. You know, when people talk about Medicaid cuts, if they're even happening, this is what I hope is getting cut, because, you know, sorry, lady, you know, you took yourself out of the gene pool. I mean, for real. Like, I can show you videos on the Hatsu people. Hadsambe people in Tanzania, Africa. They're some of the last hunter-gatherers on Earth. they would never fucking dream of blinding themselves. They wake up at 5 a.m. and they leave the camp to go hunt baboons so that they can eat that night. And all along the way, they climb up a tree, eat a bunch of honey from a beehive that's taken up in this hollowed out tree. They catch a couple mongoose, put them in their pocket for a snack later, and then they end up having a battle in the dead of night with a I don't know what you call it, a pack of baboons. They kill one or two, they go back and they're able to feed their family. Blinding themselves is like the absolute worst thing that they could possibly imagine. Yet this lady is kept alive basically by the citizenry through taxes and allowed to live this ridiculous lifestyle of blindness now. I can't even believe I'm saying blindness and lifestyle is in the same sentence. It was elective. It was by choice.
But see, that's
so she feels complete. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly the kind of stuff that will get you extra UBI in the future. You got to prove your dependency factors.
Yeah.
So the more dependencies or more vulnerabilities you have, the more you depend on the system, the more you'll get the company store digishekel. And this is going to be commonplace. I mean, you're going to have people doing all kinds of stuff to themselves in order to get that UBI.
The initial training was all the various hoops people had to go through to become COVID compliant.
Correct.
Oh, I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to, give an inch, they're going to take a mile. So that was the training program for a broader program of incremental self-sabotage and basically self-handicap.
Yep.
Essentially.
Yeah.
But hey, we are half an hour past our normal end time. I think it's a good time to kind of wrap up the show. This was an awesome show. Like we had great call-ins. We'll have to have a discussion on the Telegram about who deserves the 444 T fuel. I know Big Dog typically declines the reward, so it's probably between John and Smitty. I'm probably leaning towards John, since Smitty has won it so many times in the past.
Yes.
And John's a first-time caller.
First-time caller,
I think that's probably a good reason to give him the 444. And he was such a good caller.
Absolutely. Very probing topics.
Yeah, very probing, relevant. A different kind of angle than we've seen before, so that was super appreciated. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. This has been a pleasure. We'll hope to try to do another one in June. It's going to be a busy summer, but we'll see.
Maybe late June, about a month from now, maybe.
If you like the content, please subscribe, share the video in other channels and wherever else you talk about these issues. And if you like the idea of a bounty program where you can go edit Z-Tiddick News content and publish it on our YouTube, you'll get kudos, shout outs, promotion, as well as we'll have to develop some sort of incentive scheme for T-Fuel payments for that activity. But if you're up for that, leave a comment down below and we'll figure out exactly how we want to roll that out. But this has been a great episode 53. Xavier's great.
Yes, sir.
Having you back over, man.
Every time. Love it. Signing off.
Non-stop callers.
Yeah, that was great. Did the chat get at least a few chats in there?
Yeah. Yeah,
You got some chats going on?
Come look at it if you want.
Sweet. Raining again. Let's see what's the.